glittering heart of Los Angeles, where palm trees sway against a backdrop of neon signs and the hum of ambition fills the air, stands La Lumière, a culinary jewel nestled in the upscale enclave of Beverly Hills. This isn't just a restaurant, it's a stage for the powerful, the famous, and the aspiring, where deals are sealed over $500 bottles of Napa Valley Cabernet, and Instagram stories capture every gilded moment. The exterior glows with understated elegance, its glass facade reflecting the parade of Ferraris and Rolls-Royces that glide to a stop at the valet stand. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast a warm, golden hue over tables draped in crisp linens, where Hollywood agents, tech titans, and old-money heiresses sip martinis and trade gossip about the latest blockbuster or startup IPO. On this balmy October evening, the sun had just set, painting the sky in hues of tangerine and indigo as the city's nightlife kicked into gear. The air buzzed with the energy of a place where dreams are made and broken daily. La Lumière's glass doors parted silently, and a towering figure stepped inside, his presence commanding yet deliberately subdued. Shaquille O'Neal, the NBA legend whose name is synonymous with dominance on the court and charisma off it, stood over 7 feet tall, his broad frame filling the doorway. But tonight there was no entourage, no tailored suit from Rodeo Drive. Shaq wore a faded black hoodie, loose jeans, and scuffed Air Jordans, a look that screamed, "I just left the gym," rather than "I belong in Beverly Hills." He had spent the day at a South LA community center, coaching kids through his foundation, his laughter echoing as he taught them to shoot free throws. Shaq moved with a slow, deliberate stride, hoping to slip into the restaurant unnoticed. He wasn't here for the spotlight. He just wanted a quiet dinner to cap off a long day of giving back. The chandelier's light glinted off his broad shoulders as he scanned the room for a discreet table. The diners near the entrance glanced up, some recognizing him instantly. The man who led the Lakers to 3 straight championships. The larger-than-life personality who starred in movies and dropped rap albums. Others, less familiar with basketball royalty, raised eyebrows at his casual attire, their whispers tinged with curiosity or judgment. At the hostess stand stood Emma, a 26-year-old waitress with a polished smile and a knack for reading people, or so she thought. Her uniform was pristine, her blonde hair pulled into a sleek ponytail, not a strand out of place. She had worked at La Lumière for 3 years, clawing her way up from bussing tables to serving the elite, and she took pride in her ability to spot real wealth. To Emma, true class was in the details: a Hermès bag, a Patek Philippe watch, a confident swagger that screamed money. When her eyes landed on Shaq, she froze for a split second. His size was imposing, but his outfit, it was all wrong for La Lumière. No designer labels, no flashy accessories, just a hoodie that looked like it had seen better days. "Good evening," Emma said, her voice smooth but edged with a hint of disdain. "Do you have a reservation?" Her eyes flicked down to his sneakers, noting a scuff mark, and her lips twitched as if suppressing a smirk. Shaq met her gaze with a warm, easy smile, his deep voice steady and unassuming. "No reservation tonight? Just hoping for a table if you've got one open. Heard this place is something special." Emma's smile tightened. In her mind, La Lumière was a sanctuary for the elite, and this guy didn't fit the bill. She had seen her share of wannabes. People who wandered in hoping to rub elbows with celebrities, only to blanch at the menu prices. Her job, as she saw it, was to protect the restaurant's aura of exclusivity. "We're quite full tonight," she said, her tone clipped, though she knew there were empty tables. "Let me check." She flipped through the reservation book slowly, making a show of it, her eyes darting back to Shaq as if sizing him up. Shaq stood patiently, his hands in his pockets, unfazed by her scrutiny. He had faced tougher crowds, hostile arenas, skeptical coaches, even tabloid critics. This was nothing new. The diners nearby began to murmur. A young couple in Gucci attire whispered, "Is that Shaq? No way he's dressed like that." At a central table, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, a retired Hollywood producer, and his philanthropist wife exchanged glances. "He looks familiar," Mrs. Carter murmured, adjusting her pearl necklace. "Isn't he that basketball star?" Emma returned, her smile now a thin veil over her judgment. "I can squeeze you in," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Follow me." She led him not to a prime spot by the floor-to-ceiling windows, where the city's lights twinkled, but to a small table tucked in a dim corner near the kitchen, where the clatter of dishes and the faint smell of garlic lingered. She dropped the menu with a deliberate thud. "Are you sure this is the right place for you?" "Our menu's pretty exclusive." Shaq settled into the chair, his massive frame making it look comically small, and smiled again. "I'm sure. Thanks for finding me a spot." Emma walked away, her heels clicking sharply on the polished floor, convinced she had put this outsider in his place. But as she returned to the hostess stand, the room's energy shifted. Eyes followed Shaq, some with recognition, others with curiosity. The stage was set for a night that would challenge assumptions, expose prejudices, and leave an indelible mark on La Lumière. The interior of La Lumière buzzed with the low hum of wealth and ambition, a symphony of clinking glasses, soft jazz from a live quartet in the corner, and the occasional burst of laughter from a table of Hollywood insiders. The chandeliers above cast prisms of light across the room, illuminating faces Botoxed to perfection and wrists adorned with Cartier bracelets. Waiters moved like ghosts, delivering plates of caviar-topped oysters and pours of vintage Bordeaux with practiced grace. Yet, in the dim corner near the kitchen, Shaquille O'Neal sat quietly, his presence a stark contrast to the polished opulence around him. His faded black hoodie and worn Air Jordans seemed to defy the unspoken dress code of Beverly Hills, but his calm demeanor suggested he was exactly where he meant to be. Shaq flipped open the leather-bound menu, his eyes scanning the offerings: Kobe beef tartare, seared scallops with saffron foam, filet mignon rossini at a cool $350. He wasn't here to flaunt his wealth or status. He was here to test the soul of La Lumière, a restaurant he had quietly co-founded years ago with a vision of inclusivity. As a silent partner, he rarely visited, preferring to let the management run the show. But stories had reached him, whispers of elitism creeping into the culture, of staff prioritizing flash over substance. Tonight was about seeing it for himself. At the hostess stand, Emma leaned toward Jake, the busboy, her voice low but sharp.
Can you believe this guy?
Walks in here looking like he's heading to a pickup game at Venice Beach. Probably thinks he can post a TikTok and call it a night. She smirked, tossing her ponytail. Bet he'll choke when he sees the prices. Jake, a lanky 22-year-old with a kind face and a habit of avoiding conflict, glanced at Shaq's table. He seems chill. Maybe he's someone important.
You know, like a rapper or an athlete?
Emma rolled her eyes. In that outfit?
Please, Jake, this is La Lumière, not a dive bar in downtown LA.
Across the room, the diner's whispers grew louder. At a table near the window, Lisa, a 30-something tech entrepreneur from Silicon Valley, sipped her Pinot Noir and frowned. She had built a startup from scratch and knew what it felt like to be underestimated.
That waitress is being so rude,
she said to her business partner Marcus, a sharply dressed man in his 40s. He's just sitting there minding his own business. Why is she acting like he's crashing the Oscars? Marcus leaned back, his eyes narrowing as he studied Shaq. Hold up. That's Shaquille O'Neal, Lakers legend, won 4 rings, Hall of Famer. I saw him on Shark Tank last month pitching some new app. Guy's loaded. Lisa's eyes widened. Seriously? And she's treating him like he's broke. That's messed up. At the central table, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, a retired couple who had produced some of the biggest films of the 90s, observed the scene with quiet disapproval. Mr. Carter, his silver hair gleaming under the chandelier light, sipped his bourbon. I've seen Shaq at charity galas. He's a gentleman, donates millions to kids' programs. That girl's making a fool of herself. Mrs. Carter, her diamond earrings catching the light, nodded. It's shameful. In America, we're supposed to value people for who they are, not what they wear. Emma, oblivious to the growing discontent, approached Shaq's table with a notepad, her smile as fake as a Hollywood backdrop. Ready to order? Or maybe you'd like some time to process the menu? Her tone was syrupy, but her eyes flicked to his hoodie, implying he was out of his depth in a place where a single dish could cost more than a month's rent. Shaq looked up, his expression warm but unflappable. I'll start with a lobster bisque, please. And for the main, the filet mignon rossini. His voice was steady, almost gentle, as if he were ordering a burger at In-N-Out. Emma blinked, caught off guard. The rossini was the priciest item on the menu, a decadent plate of beef, foie gras, and truffles that only the deepest pockets ordered without flinching. She recovered quickly, her lips curling into a patronizing smile. That's quite a choice. Sure you're ready for it? It's sophisticated. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Shaq met her gaze, his eyes twinkling with amusement. I think I'll manage. Thank you. As Emma walked away, her heels clicking like a metronome, she muttered to herself, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. He's probably just showing off. Wait till he sees the bill. She relayed the order to the kitchen with a smirk. Filet mignon rossini for the guy in the hoodie. Let's see if he can handle it. The Carters exchanged a look. She's got no idea who she's dealing with, Mr. Carter said, shaking his head. This is going to be interesting. Lisa, overhearing Emma's comment, clenched her wine glass. She's so unprofessional. If this place lets her get away with that, I'm never coming back. Shaq, meanwhile, pulled out his phone and scrolled through messages from his foundation. Updates on a new scholarship program for underserved kids in LA. He had built an empire beyond basketball, from restaurant franchises to tech investments, but his heart remained with giving back. Tonight, he wasn't just a customer. He was a silent observer, testing whether La Lumière still held the values he had poured into it. As the murmurs grew and Emma's attitude sharpened, the stage was set for a reckoning that would ripple through the restaurant. The air in La Lumière was thick with the scent of truffle oil and the murmur of high society chatter, but an undercurrent of unease rippled through the dining room. The live jazz quartet in the corner played a smooth rendition of Take 5, their notes weaving through the clink of silverware and the soft pop of champagne corks. Yet, in the dim corner by the kitchen, Shaquille O'Neal remained an island of calm, his massive frame relaxed as he savored the last spoonful of his lobster bisque. The dish was a masterpiece, creamy, rich, with a hint of sherry that lingered on the palate. Shaq appreciated the craft, a reminder of why he had invested in La Lumière years ago, hoping to create a place where culinary art met human connection. But the connection tonight was fraying. Emma, the waitress, stood near the kitchen door, her arms crossed, watching Shaq with a mix of irritation and smug certainty. His composure gnawed at her. She had expected him to squirm under her pointed remarks, maybe even leave when he saw the menu prices. Instead, he sat there, unfazed, as if he owned the place, which, unbeknownst to her, he partially did. Shaq's silent partnership in La Lumière was a well-kept secret, a passion project to foster a space where anyone could feel welcome, from blue-collar workers to A-list celebrities. Tonight, he was testing that vision, and Emma was failing spectacularly. Emma approached his table with a glass of water, placing it down with a deliberate clink that echoed in the nearby silence. "Need anything else?" she asked, her tone laced with mockery. "Or is this all a bit overwhelming?" Her eyes flicked to his faded hoodie, as if it were a personal insult to the restaurant's elegance. Shaq looked up, his smile steady, almost disarming. "I'm good, thank you. Just waiting on the main course." His voice was warm, like a coach encouraging a nervous rookie, but Emma missed the depth behind it. She turned on her heel, muttering under her breath, "Let's see how he handles the Rossini. Probably never tasted truffles in his life." Her words carried to the nearest tables, drawing sharp glances. At a table by the window, Lisa, the tech entrepreneur, set down her wine glass with a soft thud. "She's unbelievable," she whispered to Marcus, her business partner. "He ordered the most expensive dish like it's nothing, and she's still acting like he's some nobody." "That's Shaquille O'Neal. She's got no clue." Marcus nodded, his eyes narrowing. "I saw him on ESPN last week breaking down the Lakers' new lineup. Guy's a legend, and he's worth what? $500 million? She's picking the wrong fight." At the central table, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, the retired Hollywood power couple, watched with growing disapproval. Mr. Carter swirled his bourbon, the ice clinking softly. "I met Shaq at a UNICEF gala," he said quietly to his wife. "He bid $100,000 on a signed Sinatra record to fund clean water projects. This girl's attitude is a disgrace to the industry." Mrs. Carter adjusted her silk scarf, her voice low but firm. "Hospitality used to mean something. She's turning this place into a country club." Emma, oblivious to the mounting criticism, leaned against the service counter, chatting with Jake, the busboy. "He's just sitting there acting all calm," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "I bet he's sweating the bill already. People like him always try to flex, then bolt." Jake shifted uncomfortably, wiping down a tray. "Emma, maybe ease up. Our job's to serve, not to play gatekeeper. He's not causing trouble." But Emma scoffed, tossing her ponytail. "Trouble?
He's the one who walked in here looking like he got lost on his way to a sports bar. Meanwhile,
The kitchen delivered Shaq's filet mignon Rossini, a work of art, tender beef crowned with a slice of foie gras, drizzled with truffle sauce, and garnished with edible gold leaf. Emma carried the plate to his table, her heels clicking sharply, drawing eyes from across the room. She set it down with a forced smile, her voice saccharine. "Here's your Rossini. Hope it's to your taste. If not, there's a In-N-Out a few blocks away." The jab was blatant, and a few diners gasped audibly. Shaq looked at the dish, then up at Emma, his expression unchanged. "Looks incredible. Thank you for bringing it out." His politeness was a shield, deflecting her barbs with ease. As Emma walked away, her smirk faltered. His calm was unnerving, like a storm brewing just out of sight. She muttered to Jake, "He's faking it. Wait till he sees the check. He'll be out the door faster than you can say overdraft." But the room was turning against her. Lisa leaned toward Marcus, her voice sharp. "If this place lets her keep acting like that, I'm tweeting about it. This is LA, not some elitist gated community." Marcus nodded. Shaq's got more class in his pinky than she's got in her whole attitude. At another table, Mrs. Hamilton, an elderly woman with a silver bob and a string of pearls, sipped her tea and whispered to her granddaughter Sophie, a UCLA student. This is why I don't come to places like this anymore. Judging a man for his clothes?
In America of all places.
Sophie, scrolling through her phone, pulled up Shaq's Wikipedia page. Grandma, that's Shaquille O'Neal. He's like a cultural icon. Owns half of Papa John's or something. She's so clueless. Shaq, meanwhile, cut into his steak, savoring the first bite. The flavors were exquisite, a testament to the chefs he had helped recruit years ago. But his mind wasn't just on the food. He was here to gauge the heart of La Lumière, and what he saw, Emma's prejudice, the diner's mixed reactions, told him the restaurant had strayed from its mission. He wasn't angry, not yet. He believed in second chances, in teaching through example. But the night was young, and Emma's actions were setting the stage for a lesson no one in La Lumière would forget. The atmosphere in La Lumière thrummed with the pulse of Los Angeles nightlife, a blend of glamour and ambition underscored by the soft clink of wine glasses and the murmur of deals being struck over dessert. The jazz quartet shifted to a mellow rendition of Moonlight in Vermont, their notes weaving through the dining room like a gentle breeze. But in the corner near the kitchen, where Shaquille O'Neal sat, the air felt heavier, charged with the tension of a confrontation brewing beneath the surface. His filet mignon Rossini sat half-eaten, each bite a reminder of the restaurant's culinary brilliance and its faltering commitment to the values he had championed as its silent co-founder. Emma, emboldened by what she saw as her control over the situation, hovered near the service counter, her eyes darting to Shaq's table. His calm demeanor grated on her. She had expected him to flinch at the prices, maybe stutter when ordering the $350 Rossini, or at least show some sign of discomfort in La Lumière's rarefied air. Instead, he ate with the ease of a man who belonged, his massive hands handling the cutlery with a precision that belied his casual attire. It infuriated her, this giant in a faded hoodie defying her carefully curated image of who deserved to dine here. She approached his table again, this time with a water pitcher, her movements deliberate, almost theatrical. "Still doing okay over here?" she asked, her voice dripping with false sweetness. She leaned in slightly, her eyes scanning his plate, then his outfit. "The Rossini's pretty rich. Not everyone can handle it. Want me to get you something lighter? Maybe a salad?" Her words were a thinly veiled jab, implying he was out of his depth in both taste and wallet. Shaq looked up, his eyes meeting hers with a calm that felt like a challenge. "I'm enjoying it, thank you," he said, his deep voice steady, tinged with a warmth that seemed to mock her efforts to rattle him. The chef nailed it. "Could you let them know?" Emma's smile tightened, her knuckles whitening around the pitcher's handle. His politeness was like a wall she couldn't breach. "Sure," she said curtly, pouring water into his glass with a touch more force than necessary, a few drops splashing onto the tablecloth. "Just checking. Not everyone's used to this kind of dining." She lingered for a moment, waiting for a crack in his composure, but Shaq simply nodded, returning to his meal as she walked away. Her heels clicking sharply, she muttered to herself, loud enough for nearby diners to catch. "He's putting on a show. Bet he's Googling what foie gras is right now." Her words drew a few gasps. At a nearby table, Lisa, the tech entrepreneur, clenched her jaw. "She's relentless," she whispered to Marcus, her business partner. "He's Shaquille O'Neal, for God's sake. I saw him on Jimmy Kimmel last month talking about his new sneaker line. Why's she acting like he's some random guy off the street?" Marcus shook his head, sipping his espresso. "She's digging her own grave. Shaq's got more influence in this town than half the suits in here. She's clueless." At the central table, Mr. and Mrs. Carter exchanged a look of quiet indignation. Mr. Carter, his silver hair catching the chandelier light, set down his bourbon. "This is worse than I thought," he said to his wife. "She's not just rude, she's embarrassing the restaurant. I've dined here for years and I've never seen service this disgraceful." Mrs. Carter, her pearl necklace glinting, nodded. "Shaq's handling it like a saint. Most people would have called her out by now." Emma, oblivious to the growing disapproval, leaned against the service counter, whispering to Jake. "He's still eating like he owns the place," she said, her voice laced with scorn. "I give him 10 minutes before he realizes he can't afford this and bolts." Jake, wiping down a tray, looked uneasy.
"Emma, you're pushing it."
"What if he's like a big deal? You're gonna get us both in trouble." Emma scoffed, tossing her ponytail. "A big deal? In those sneakers? This is Beverly Hills, Jake. People like him don't belong here unless they're dressed the part." But the room was turning. At another table, Mrs. Hamilton, the elderly woman with a sharp gaze, sipped her chamomile tea and murmured to her granddaughter, Sophie, "This is why I avoid these trendy places. Judging a man for his clothes? In America, where anyone can rise from nothing? It's shameful." Sophie, scrolling through Instagram, pulled up a post of Shaq at a recent LA charity event, surrounded by smiling kids. "Grandma, he's a legend. He built schools in Compton. She's messing with the wrong guy." Shaq, meanwhile, took another bite of his Rossini, the flavors of beef and truffle melting on his tongue. He wasn't just here for the food. He was here to test La Lumière's heart, to see if the restaurant he had helped create still welcomed everyone, as he had envisioned. Growing up in Newark, he'd faced judgment for his size, his background, his dreams. Those experiences had shaped him, taught him to rise above with kindness and strength. Tonight, he saw echoes of that prejudice in Emma's eyes, but he wasn't ready to confront her, not yet. He believed in teaching moments and letting people reveal themselves before stepping in. The murmurs grew louder. A group of young influencers at a corner table snapped discreet photos of Shaq, whispering excitedly, "That's Shaq Diesel. He's got like 20 million followers. Why's the waitress being such a snob?" Another diner, a music producer in a velvet blazer, muttered to his date, "If she's treating Shaq like this, imagine how she treats regular folks." Emma's actions were cracking the polished veneer of La Lumière, exposing a flaw in its culture. Shaq, still eating calmly, felt the weight of every glance, every whisper. He wasn't angry. He was patient, waiting for the moment when the truth would shift the room's energy. The stage was set, and Emma, unaware, was writing her own downfall with every smug remark. The dining room of La Lumière shimmered with the glow of wealth and aspiration, the soft jazz notes mingling with the clatter of fine china and the murmur of conversations about Hollywood premieres and Silicon Valley ventures. The scent of truffle sauce and aged wine hung in the air, a testament to the restaurant's status as a beacon of Los Angeles luxury. But in the dim corner by the kitchen, where Shaquille O'Neal sat, the atmosphere crackled with an unspoken challenge. His filet mignon Rossini, a $350 masterpiece of beef, foie gras, and truffle, was nearly finished, each bite savored with the calm appreciation of a man who knew quality and knew his worth. Shaq wasn't just a customer tonight. He was a silent observer, testing whether La Lumière, the restaurant he had co-founded to be a haven of inclusivity, still honored that vision. Emma, the waitress, stood at the service counter, her arms crossed, her eyes fixed on Shaq's table with a mix of disdain and determination. His unshakable composure was a personal affront to her. She had expected him to crumble under her subtle jabs, maybe hesitate over the menu prices or ask for something cheaper. Instead, he had ordered the most expensive dish with the ease of someone who dined like this daily. It didn't add up with his faded hoodie and scuffed sneakers, and that dissonance fueled her need to assert her perceived superiority. She approached his table again, this time with a dessert menu, her heels clicking like a metronome of judgment. "Finished already?" she asked, her voice laced with mockery as she glanced at the nearly empty plate. "I hope it wasn't too much for you. Dessert's even pricier. Our signature chocolate soufflé is $75. Want to take a look, or is that a bit out of reach?" Her words were sharp, designed to sting, and loud enough to draw glances from nearby tables. Shaq set down his fork, his massive hands resting lightly on the table, and met her gaze with a smile that carried a hint of amusement. "The Rossini was perfect," he said, his deep voice steady and warm. "I'll take a look at the dessert menu. Thanks for bringing it over." His politeness was a fortress, deflecting her barbs with effortless grace. Emma's smirk faltered for a split second, but she recovered, tossing the menu onto the table with a flick of her wrist. "Suit yourself," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "Just a heads up, our desserts are for refined palates. Not everyone gets them." She lingered, expecting a flinch, a sign that she'd finally rattled him. Shaq opened the menu, his eyes scanning the offerings. Soufflé, tiramisu, a $120 artisanal cheese plate. "The soufflé sounds great," he said, looking up. "I'll have that, please." Emma let out a derisive laugh, loud enough to turn heads. "Really? The soufflé? Okay, I'll put it in. Good luck with that." Her voice was syrupy sweet, but the sarcasm was unmistakable, carrying across the room like a challenge. She turned away, her heels clicking sharply, and muttered to herself, "He's just flexing. Wait till the bill hits, he'll be out the door." The comment reached the ears of nearby diners, sparking a wave of murmurs. At Lisa's table, the tech entrepreneur clenched her wine glass, her face flushed with indignation. "She's unbelievable," she whispered to Marcus. "He's Shaquille O'Neal, NBA champ, movie star, philanthropist. I saw him on Ellen talking about his kid's charity, and she's treating him like he's some broke wannabe?" Marcus shook his head, his eyes narrowing. "She's got no idea who she's messing with. Shaq's got more clout in LA than half the producers in this room. This is gonna blow up in her face." At the central table, Mr. and Mrs. Carter exchanged a look of quiet outrage. Mr. Carter, his bourbon glass now empty, leaned toward his wife. "This is beyond unprofessional," he said, his voice low but firm. "I've dined here since the place opened, and I've never seen such blatant disrespect. Shaq's handling it like a pro, but she's embarrassing the whole restaurant." Mrs. Carter nodded, her pearl earrings catching the chandelier light. "He's a gentleman, Most people would have called the manager by now. He's giving her enough rope to hang herself. At another table, Mrs. Hamilton, the elderly woman with a sharp gaze, set down her teacup with a soft clink. "This is why I avoid these places," she murmured to her granddaughter Sophie. "Judging a man for his clothes in a city built on dreams? It's un-American." Sophie, scrolling through X on her phone, pulled up a post of Shaq at a recent Lakers game, high-fiving fans. "Grandma, he's a legend. He owns like a dozen Krispy Kreme franchises." She's so out of her league. Emma, back at the service counter, whispered to Jake, her voice dripping with scorn. "He ordered the souffle." "The souffle? He's got to be bluffing. No way he's got the cash for this." Jake, wiping down a tray, looked uncomfortable. "Emma, you're pushing it too far. What if he's like a VIP? You're gonna get us in trouble." Emma scoffed, tossing her ponytail. "A VIP? In that hoodie? This is Beverly Hills, Jake. You don't walk into La Lumière looking like you just left a skate park." But the room was shifting against her. A group of influencers at a corner table whispered excitedly, one of them filming a discreet Instagram story. "That's Shaq Diesel, y'all. Why's the waitress being so shady? This is wild." Another diner. A music producer in a velvet blazer muttered to his date, "If she's treating Shaq like this, imagine how she treats the rest of us." Shaq, meanwhile, leaned back in his chair, his eyes wandering to the chandelier above, its crystals refracting light like tiny stars. He wasn't here just for the food. He was here to test the heart of La Lumière, to see if it still welcomed everyone, as he had envisioned when he invested in it. Growing up, he'd faced judgment for his size, his background, his dreams. Those experiences had taught him resilience, but also compassion. He believed in second chances, in teaching through example. But Emma's relentless prejudice was testing his patience, setting the stage for a reckoning that would soon unfold. The glow of La Lumière's chandeliers bathed the dining room in a golden haze, reflecting off polished silverware and the sleek surfaces of designer watches. The jazz quartet's soft rendition of Summertime drifted through the air, blending with the clink of glasses and the hum of conversations about movie deals and private jet itineraries. But beneath the polished surface, a quiet storm was brewing. In the corner by the kitchen, Shaquille O'Neal sat with an air of unshakable calm, his dessert order for the $75 chocolate souffle now placed. His massive frame relaxed in a chair that seemed comically small. His faded hoodie and scuffed Air Jordans stood out like a protest against the room's opulence. Yet his presence commanded respect, a fact lost on Emma, the waitress, who was determined to see him as an intruder in her carefully curated world. Emma leaned against the service counter, her arms crossed, whispering to Jake, the busboy, with a smirk that barely concealed her irritation. "He's really going for it, huh? Souffle and all," she said, her voice low but sharp enough to carry to nearby ears. "I bet he's maxing out his credit card just to save face. People like him always try to act bigger than they are." Her words were laced with scorn, her eyes flicking toward Shaq's table as if daring him to overhear. Jake, wiping down a tray with a damp cloth, shifted uncomfortably. "Emma, maybe chill. He's not bothering anyone. What if he's like famous or something? You're gonna look dumb if he is." His tone was cautious, his eyes darting to Shaq, who was casually scrolling through his phone, seemingly oblivious to the drama swirling around him. Emma scoffed, tossing her ponytail. "Famous in that outfit? This is La Lumière, Jake. You don't walk in here looking like you just rolled out of a gym unless you're trying to prove something." He's probably some wannabe influencer fishing for clout, but the diners were no longer neutral observers. At Lisa's table, the tech entrepreneur's face was flushed with secondhand embarrassment. "She's so loud," she whispered to Marcus, her business partner. Everyone can hear her talking smack. "That's Shaquille O'Neal. She's got no idea he's a Lakers legend, owns half a dozen businesses, and probably has more money than everyone in this room combined." She pulled out her phone, scrolling through X to show Marcus a recent post of Shaq at a charity event, handing out backpacks to kids in South LA. Marcus nodded, his eyes narrowing as he watched Emma. She's acting like she runs the place, but she's about to crash and burn. Shaq's not just some guy, he's a cultural icon. This is LA, for God's sake. You don't mess with a guy like that. At the central table, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, the retired Hollywood couple, exchanged a look of quiet indignation. Mr. Carter set down his empty bourbon glass, his silver hair catching the light. "I've seen this kind of thing before," he murmured to his wife. "People like her think they're guarding some sacred gate, but they're just exposing their own bias. Shaq's worth millions, but even if he wasn't, he deserves better than this." Mrs. Carter, her pearl earrings glinting, nodded. "It's not just about him. It's about what this place is supposed to stand for. I remember when La Lumière opened, it was about welcoming everyone, not just the Gucci crowd. She's ruining that legacy." At another table, Mrs. Hamilton, the elderly woman with a sharp gaze, sipped her chamomile tea, and whispered to her granddaughter, Sophie, "This is why I avoid these trendy spots. Judging a man for his clothes in a city where dreams are built from nothing, it's disgraceful." Sophie, scrolling through Instagram, pulled up a video of Shaq DJing at a Vegas club under his stage name, DJ Diesel. "Grandma, he's a total legend. He's got like 20 million followers and owns a chunk of Papa John's. She's so clueless." Shaq, meanwhile, sat quietly, his eyes flicking from his phone to the room around him. He was reading messages from his foundation, updates on a new after-school program in Compton, but his attention was also on the restaurant's pulse. As a silent co-founder, he had poured millions into La Lumière, not just for profit, but to create a space where anyone could feel valued, regardless of their background. Growing up in Newark, he'd faced plenty of judgment, for his size, his rough edges, his big dreams. Those experiences had taught him to rise above with kindness, but also to recognize when a lesson was needed. Emma's behavior was a red flag, a sign that the restaurant's culture had drifted from his vision. Emma, oblivious to the growing disapproval, approached a table of Hollywood execs with a radiant smile, fawning over their every request. She refilled their wine glasses with a flourish, laughing at their jokes, her demeanor a stark contrast to the cold indifference she showed Shaq. As she passed his table, she deliberately avoided eye contact, letting his water glass sit empty, her heels clicking past like a declaration of superiority, the diners noticed. A music producer in a velvet blazer leaned toward his date, muttering, "She's treating him like he's invisible." If that's how she treats Shaq, imagine how she treats regular folks. A group of influencers at a corner table whispered excitedly, one of them typing furiously on X, "At La Lumière RN and the waitress is being so rude to Shaq, like, girl, do you know who he is?" "Lunch Shaq." Lisa, unable to hold back, turned to Marcus. "I'm this close to calling the manager myself. This is ridiculous." Marcus nodded, his eyes on Shaq. "Give it time. Shaq's playing it cool, but I bet he's got a plan. He's not the type to let this slide." Shaq, still calm, felt the weight of the room's attention. He wasn't here to make a scene, but he was ready for the moment when Emma's prejudice would force a reckoning. Her whispers, her jabs, her refusal to see him as anything but an outsider. They were building a case, not against him, but against her. The stage was set, and the fault lines in La Lumière's polished facade were beginning to show. The dining room of La Lumière pulsed with the understated elegance of Beverly Hills, where the clink of crystal glasses and the murmur of high-stakes conversations created a symphony of privilege. The jazz quartet's soulful rendition of My Funny Valentine floated through the air, mingling with the aroma of truffle-infused dishes and aged Napa Valley wines. But beneath the polished surface, a current of unease was swelling, centered on the corner table where Shaquille O'Neal sat. His massive frame was relaxed, his eyes occasionally flicking to the chandelier above as he waited for his $75 chocolate souffle. His faded hoodie and scuffed Air Jordans stood in stark contrast to the room's opulence. Yet his calm demeanor radiated a quiet authority that was starting to shift the restaurant's atmosphere. Emma, the waitress, had returned to the service counter, her smugness undimmed despite the growing murmurs around her. She leaned toward Jake, the busboy, her voice low but sharp. "He's still sitting there like he owns the place," she whispered, her eyes darting to Shaq's table. "Ordered a souffle, like that's gonna fool anyone. He'll be out the door when the bill comes, trust me." Her tone was laced with scorn, her ponytail flicking as she shook her head. Jake, polishing a wine glass, looked uneasy. "Emma, you're being way too loud. People are starting to stare. What if he's someone important? You're gonna regret this." But Emma waved him off. "Important? In that outfit? This is LA, Jake. You don't walk into La Lumière looking like you just left a pickup game unless you're trying to scam a free meal." Her words, though hushed, carried to nearby tables, and the diners were no longer content to stay silent. At Lisa's table, the tech entrepreneur's indignation was palpable. She leaned toward Marcus, her business partner, her voice tight with frustration. "She's not even trying to hide it," Lisa said, glancing at Shaq. "That's Shaquille O'Neal, Lakers legend, philanthropist, probably richer than everyone in this room. I saw him on Shark Tank investing in some eco-friendly startup, and she's treating him like he's crashing a gala. It's disgusting." Marcus nodded, his eyes narrowing as he watched Emma's dismissive strut. "It's not just rude, it's un-American. LA's supposed to be about dreams, not gatekeeping. Shaq's the guy who built schools in South LA, and she's acting like he's some nobody. She's gonna crash hard." At the central table, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, the retired Hollywood couple, were equally incensed. Mr. Carter set down his fork, his silver hair catching the chandelier's glow. "This is an embarrassment," he murmured to his wife. "I've dined here since La Lumière opened, back when it was about welcoming everyone, not just the Armani crowd. Shaq's a national treasure, 4 NBA rings, movies, charities. And she's treating him like he wandered in off Skid Row. Mrs. Carter, her pearl earrings glinting, nodded. It's not just about him. It's about what this place stands for, or used to. I met Shaq at a Red Cross fundraiser. He spent the whole night talking to kids, not schmoozing with big shots. He deserves better than this. At another table, Mrs. Hamilton, the elderly woman with a sharp gaze, sipped her chamomile tea, her lips pursed in disapproval. This is why I avoid these places, she said to her granddaughter, Sophie, a UCLA student. In America, we're supposed to judge people by their character, not their clothes. That man's being treated like an outsider in a city built on second chances. Sophie, scrolling through X on her phone, showed her grandmother a post of Shaq at a recent LA charity gala, handing out scholarships. Grandma, that's Shaq. He's like a legend. Owns Krispy Kreme franchises, DJs at Coachella. She's so out of her depth. The murmurs spread like wildfire. A music producer in a velvet blazer leaned toward his date, his voice low but firm. That's Shaquille O'Neal. I worked on a track for one of his old rap albums. Guy's got more heart than half of Hollywood, and she's treating him like trash. If this gets out, La Lumiere's gonna take a hit. His date? A fashion influencer nodded, already drafting a post on X. At La Lumière, and the waitress is straight up disrespecting Shaq. Like, girl, he's a king. Beverly Hills. Do better. A group of young influencers at a corner table whispered excitedly, their phones out, capturing discreet videos. That's Shaq Diesel, one said, zooming in. He's got 20 million followers, owns half of Papa John's, and she's acting like he's broke. This is going viral, another added. I'm posting this on TikTok. People need to see how shady this place is. Even the quieter diners were stirred. A middle-aged couple celebrating their anniversary exchanged glances, the wife whispering, "He's so calm." Most people would have snapped by now. She's making a fool of herself. Her husband nodded. That's Shaq. I saw him on TNT analyzing the playoffs. Guy's a class act. Shaq, meanwhile, sat quietly, his eyes occasionally wandering to the room's glittering decor. He wasn't blind to the whispers or Emma's jabs. As a silent co-founder of La Lumière, he had invested in a vision of a restaurant where anyone, rich or poor, famous or unknown, could feel valued. Growing up in Newark, he'd faced judgment for his size, his background, his dreams. Those experiences had taught him to rise above with grace, but also to recognize when a lesson was needed. Emma's prejudice was a crack in the restaurant's foundation, and the diner's growing sympathy was proof that her actions weren't going unnoticed. Lisa, unable to stay silent, turned to Marcus. I'm tweeting about this. If La Lumière lets her keep acting like this, they're done. Shaq's a hero in this city. Marcus nodded. He's not just sitting there for the food. He's waiting for the right moment. Trust me, he's got this. The tide of sympathy was turning, and Emma, oblivious, was about to learn that her assumptions were not just wrong, they were dangerous. Shaq's calm was a prelude to a reckoning that would shake La Lumière to its core. The ambiance of La Lumière was a carefully curated blend of Los Angeles glamour and understated sophistication. The jazz quartet's rendition of Blue and Green wove through the dining room, its melancholic notes mingling with the clink of crystal glasses and the soft laughter of the city's elite. The scent of truffle and roasted coffee beans lingered in the air, a reminder of the restaurant's status as a beacon of culinary excellence. But in the corner near the kitchen, where Shaquille O'Neal sat, the atmosphere was thick with tension. His table, tucked away in the dimmest part of the room, felt like a stage for an unfolding drama. Shaq's massive frame was relaxed, his faded hoodie and scuffed Air Jordans a quiet rebellion against the room's opulence. Yet his calm demeanor only amplified the growing unease among the diners watching the scene. Emma, the waitress, had doubled down on her campaign to make Shaq feel out of place. Convinced he was a pretender in her exclusive domain, she was determined to push him to the breaking point. His order for the $75 chocolate souffle, a delicate dessert that required 20 minutes to prepare, had been placed, but Emma had no intention of expediting it. She moved through the dining room with a performative grace, fawning over a table of Hollywood producers with extra pours of Napa Valley Chardonnay and lingering to laugh at their jokes. Every so often her eyes flicked to Shaq's table, a smirk playing on her lips as she deliberately ignored his empty water glass and the absence of his dessert. At the service counter, she leaned toward Jake, the busboy, her voice low but sharp. "Let him wait," she whispered, her tone dripping with disdain. "He thinks he can play big shot with that souffle order. I'll make sure he knows this isn't his kind of place." She adjusted her ponytail, her movements confident, as if she were the queen of La Lumière's polished kingdom. Jake, wiping down a tray, frowned, his discomfort growing. "Emma, you're taking this too far. His water's been empty for like 15 minutes, and the souffle should have been started by now." "What if he complains to the manager?" Emma scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Complain? He won't. Guys like him don't stick around when they realize they're out of their league. Trust me, he'll leave before the dessert even comes. But the diners were watching, and their sympathy for Shaq was turning to outrage. At Lisa's table, the tech entrepreneur's patience was wearing thin. She leaned toward Marcus, her business partner, her voice tight with frustration. "She's straight up ignoring him now," she said, gesturing toward Shaq's empty glass. "That's Shaquille O'Neal, Lakers legend, philanthropist, probably worth more than this entire restaurant. I saw him on The Tonight Show talking about his new education fund, and she's treating him like he's invisible? This is ridiculous," Marcus nodded, his eyes narrowing as he watched Emma flit between other tables. "It's not just rude, it's sabotage. Shaq's a hero in LA. If this hits X, La Lumière is going to be trending for all the wrong reasons." At the central table, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, the retired Hollywood couple, exchanged a look of quiet indignation. Mr. Carter set down his coffee cup, his silver hair catching the chandelier's glow. "This is unacceptable," he murmured to his wife. "I've been coming here since the place opened, and I've never seen service this blatantly discriminatory. Shaq's a national icon, 4 NBA championships, movies, charities." "And she's leaving him high and dry?" Mrs. Carter, her pearl earrings glinting, nodded. "It's not just about him. It's about what this place is supposed to be. I met Shaq at a Make-A-Wish event. He spent hours with sick kids, not chasing clout. She's making a mockery of hospitality." At another table, Mrs. Hamilton, the elderly woman with a sharp gaze, sipped her chamomile tea, her lips pursed. "This is disgraceful," she said to her granddaughter, Sophie, a UCLA student. "In America, we're supposed to treat everyone with respect, no matter how they look. That man's being left to sit there like he's nothing." Sophie, scrolling through X, showed her grandmother a clip of Shaq at a recent LA food drive, handing out meals. "Grandma, he's a legend. He owns like a dozen Five Guys franchises. She's so clueless." The murmurs grew louder, spreading like a ripple across the dining room. A music producer in a velvet blazer leaned toward his date, his voice low but firm. "That's Shaq. I worked with him on a commercial for his sneaker line. Guy's got more heart than half of Hollywood, and she's treating him like he's nobody. This place is going to get roasted online." His date, a fashion influencer, was already typing on X. At La Lumière, and the waitress is ignoring Shaq like he's invisible. "Worst service ever. Shaq. Beverly Hills." A group of influencers at a corner table whispered excitedly, their phones out, capturing discreet videos. "That's Shaq Diesel," one said, zooming in. "He's got millions of followers, and she's leaving him hanging. This is going viral," another added. "I'm posting this on TikTok. People need to know how shady this place is." Shaq, meanwhile, sat patiently, his eyes wandering to the framed art on the walls, a series of abstract pieces he had helped select when La Lumière was founded. As a silent co-founder, he had envisioned a restaurant where anyone could feel welcome, from Compton to Beverly Hills. Growing up in Newark, he'd faced judgment for his size, his background, his dreams. Those experiences had taught him to stay calm under pressure, but also to recognize when a lesson was needed. Emma's deliberate neglect was a glaring violation of the restaurant's mission, and the diner's growing sympathy was proof that her actions were resonating far beyond his table. Lisa, unable to contain herself, turned to Marcus. "I'm this close to walking up to the manager myself." "This is beyond unprofessional." Marcus nodded, his eyes on Shaq. "Give it a minute. Shaq's not reacting, but he's not oblivious. He's waiting for the right moment, trust me." Shaq's calm was a stark contrast to the rising tension. He knew the soufflé took time, but Emma's neglect, leaving his water glass empty, delaying his order, was intentional. He wasn't angry. He was patient, believing in the power of teaching through example. But Emma's actions were tightening the noose around her own reputation, and the stage was set for a reckoning that would soon unfold. The dining room of La Lumière shimmered under the golden glow of its chandeliers, a beacon of Los Angeles luxury, where the elites savored their status, alongside plates of caviar and glasses of vintage Dom Perignon. The jazz quartet's soulful rendition of Autumn Leaves drifted through the air, its melancholic notes blending with the soft clink of silverware and the murmur of conversations about Oscar buzz and tech IPOs. But the polished elegance was fracturing, a subtle crack spreading from the corner table where Shaquille O'Neal sat. His massive frame remained relaxed, his faded hoodie and scuffed Air Jordans a quiet defiance of the room's opulence. But his empty water glass and the absence of his $75 chocolate soufflé, now over 20 minutes late, were impossible to ignore. Shaq's calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to the growing unease rippling through the restaurant. As diners began to notice Emma's deliberate neglect, Emma, stationed at the service counter, was oblivious to the shifting mood. She leaned toward Jake, the busboy, her voice sharp with smug satisfaction. "He's still waiting," she whispered, her eyes flicking to Shaq's table with a smirk. No souffle yet, and I'm not rushing it. Let him sit there and realize this isn't his scene. Her ponytail swung as she turned to fuss over a table of Hollywood agents, pouring their wine with a flourish and laughing at their banter. Her attentiveness a pointed contrast to the cold shoulder she gave Shaq. Jake, polishing a tray, looked increasingly uneasy.
Emma, it's been way too long.
His water's empty, and the souffle should have been out by now. People are noticing. You're gonna get us in hot water. Emma rolled her eyes, dismissing him with a wave. Relax, Jake. He's not gonna complain. Guys like him don't last in places like this. He'll leave when he sees the bill. But the diners were far from oblivious. At Lisa's table, the tech entrepreneur's frustration was boiling over. She leaned toward Marcus, her business partner, her voice low but intense. It's been over 20 minutes since he ordered dessert, and his water glass is bone dry, she said, gesturing toward Shaq's table. That's Shaquille O'Neal, Lakers legend, philanthropist worth like $500 million. I saw him on Good Morning America talking about his new scholarship program.
And she's leaving him hanging like he's nobody?
This is outrageous, Marcus nodded, his eyes narrowing as he watched Emma's performative charm at another table. It's deliberate. She's trying to humiliate him. Shaq's a hero in this city, built community centers in Compton, mentors kids. If this gets out, La Lumiere's reputation is toast. At the central table, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, the retired Hollywood couple, exchanged a look of quiet outrage. Mr. Carter set down his espresso cup, his silver hair catching the chandelier's glow. This is beyond unprofessional, he murmured to his wife. I've been coming here for years, and I've never seen such blatant disrespect. Shaq's a national icon, 4 NBA rings, TV shows, charities, and she's treating him like he's invisible. Mrs. Carter, her pearl earrings glinting, nodded. It's not just about him. It's about what this place stands for. I met Shaq at a Habitat for Humanity event. He helped build houses for families in need. He's got more heart than half the people in this room.
And she's making a mockery of hospitality. At another table,
Mrs. Hamilton, the elderly woman with a sharp gaze, sipped her chamomile tea, her lips pursed in disapproval. This is shameful, she said to her granddaughter Sophie, a UCLA student. In America, we're supposed to treat everyone with dignity, no matter their clothes. That man's been waiting forever, and she's ignoring him like he's nothing. Sophie, scrolling through X, showed her grandmother a video of Shaq at a recent LA charity run, high-fiving kids.
Grandma, that's Shaq. He's a legend. Owns Five Guys franchises, DJs at festivals.
She's so clueless. The unease spread like a contagion. A music producer in a velvet blazer leaned toward his date, his voice low but firm. That's Shaquille O'Neal. I worked with him on a Reebok campaign. Guy's got more charisma than half of Hollywood, and she's leaving him high and dry. This place is going to get slammed online. His date, a fashion influencer, was already typing on X. At La Lumière, and the waitress is straight up ignoring Shaq. His dessert's late, water's empty. Worst service ever. Shaq, Beverly Hills. A group of influencers at a corner table whispered excitedly, their phones out, capturing discreet videos. That's Shaq Diesel, one said, zooming in. He's got millions of followers, and she's making him wait like he's nobody. This is going viral. Another added, I'm posting this on TikTok. La Lumiere's about to get roasted. Even quieter diners were stirred. A middle-aged couple celebrating their anniversary exchanged glances, the wife whispering, he's been sitting there forever with no water, no dessert. She's doing it on purpose. Her husband nodded. That's Shaq. I saw him on TNT breaking down the NBA Finals. Guy's a class act, and she's treating him like garbage. Shaq, meanwhile, sat patiently, his eyes wandering to the abstract art on the walls, pieces he had helped choose when La Lumière was founded. As a silent co-founder, he had envisioned a restaurant where everyone felt valued, from the streets of South LA to the hills of Bel Air. Growing up in Newark, he'd faced judgment for his size, his background, his dreams. Those experiences had taught him to stay calm under pressure, but also to recognize when a lesson was needed. Emma's deliberate delay was a glaring violation of that vision, and the diner's growing unease was proof that her actions were reverberating far beyond his table. Lisa, unable to hold back, turned to Marcus. I'm tweeting this right now. If La Lumière lets her keep this up, they're done. Shaq's a legend in this city. Marcus nodded, his eyes on Shaq. He's not reacting, but he's not clueless. He's waiting for the right moment. Trust me, he's got a plan. The unease in La Lumière was palpable, a taut string ready to snap. Shaq's calm was a beacon, drawing the room's attention, while Emma's neglect was digging her deeper into a hole she couldn't see. The stage was set for a reckoning that would soon shake the restaurant to its core. The dining room of La Lumière glowed with the elegance of a Hollywood premiere, its chandeliers casting prisms of light across tables adorned with fine china and crystal stemware. The jazz quartet's rendition of Stella by Starlight wove through the air, a delicate counterpoint to the clink of glasses and the murmur of conversations about Sundance deals and Malibu real estate. But the polished facade was cracking, the tension radiating from the corner table where Shaquille O'Neal sat. His massive frame relaxed despite the absence of his $75 chocolate souffle, now nearly 30 minutes late, and his empty water glass, untouched by Emma, the waitress, who seemed determined to make him feel like an outsider. Shaq's faded hoodie and scuffed Air Jordans stood out like a challenge to the room's opulence, but his calm demeanor only heightened the growing unease among the diners, who were now openly watching the drama unfold. Emma, stationed at the service counter, was blind to the shifting tide. Her smugness had hardened into defiance, her belief that Shaq didn't belong fueling her every move. She leaned toward Jake, the busboy, her voice low but sharp enough to carry to nearby tables. "Still no souffle for Mr. Hoodie," she said with a smirk, her eyes flicking to Shaq's table. "I told the kitchen to take their time. Let him sweat it out. He's probably regretting that big order now." Her words dripped with scorn, her ponytail swinging as she turned to fuss over a table of tech moguls, refilling their glasses with a practiced smile while ignoring Shaq's empty one. Jake, wiping down a tray, looked increasingly anxious. "Emma, you're pushing it," he whispered, his voice tight. "People are staring. His dessert's way overdue, and his water's been empty forever. Someone's gonna tell the manager." Emma rolled her eyes, her confidence unshaken. "Let them stare. He's not fooling anyone in that outfit. This is La Lumière, not some dive bar in downtown LA. He'll bolt when the bill comes, trust me." But her comments, louder than she realized, were overheard, sparking a wave of indignation. At Lisa's table, the tech entrepreneur's face was flushed with anger. She leaned toward Marcus, her business partner, her voice low but intense. "Did you hear that?" "She's deliberately delaying his order," she said, gesturing toward Shaq's table. "That's Shaquille O'Neal, Lakers legend, philanthropist, worth $500 million. I saw him on CNN talking about his new tech startup, and she's treating him like he's some nobody trying to scam a meal. This is unacceptable." Marcus nodded, his eyes narrowing as he watched Emma's performative charm at another table. "She's not just rude, she's sabotaging him. Shaq's a hero in this city. He funded a whole community center in Watts. If this hits X, La Lumiere's gonna be a PR nightmare." At the central table, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, the retired Hollywood couple, exchanged a look of quiet fury. Mr. Carter set down his coffee cup, his silver hair catching the chandelier's glow. "She's openly mocking him now," he murmured to his wife. "I've been coming here since the place opened, and this is the worst behavior I've ever seen. Shaq's a national treasure. 4 NBA rings, TV shows, charities. And she's making him wait on purpose?" Mrs. Carter, her pearl earrings glinting, nodded. "It's a disgrace. I met Shaq at a Boys and Girls Club gala. He spent the whole night mentoring kids. He's got more integrity than half the people in this room, and she's treating him like he's beneath her. It's shameful." At another table, Mrs. Hamilton, the elderly woman with a sharp gaze, sipped her chamomile tea, her lips pursed in disapproval. "This is outrageous," she said to her granddaughter Sophie, a UCLA student. "She's deliberately ignoring him, and now she's bragging about it. In America, we're supposed to treat everyone with respect, no matter how they're dressed." Sophie, scrolling through X, showed her grandmother a post of Shaq at a recent LA food drive, handing out groceries. "Grandma, that's Shaq. He's a legend. Owns Krispy Kreme franchises, DJs at Coachella." She's so out of her depth. The tension was palpable, Emma's overheard comments fueling the diner's outrage. A music producer in a velvet blazer leaned toward his date, his voice low but firm. "She just said she's making him wait on purpose." "That's Shaquille O'Neal. I worked with him on a Pepsi ad. Guy's got more heart than half of Hollywood, and she's treating him like garbage. This place is gonna get roasted." His date, a fashion influencer, was already typing on X. "Waitress at La Lumière is deliberately ignoring Shaq. Desserts 30 mins late, water's empty. Disgusting service. Shaq. From Beverly Hills." A group of influencers at a corner table whispered excitedly, their phones out, capturing discreet videos. "That's Shaq Diesel," one said, zooming in. "She's bragging about screwing him over. He's got 20 million followers and she's acting like he's broke. This is going viral." Another added, "I'm posting this on TikTok. La Lumiere's about to get canceled." Even quieter diners were stirred. A middle-aged couple celebrating their anniversary exchanged glances, the wife whispering, "She's openly admitting she's delaying his order." "That's so unprofessional." Her husband nodded. "That's Shaq. I saw him on Inside the NBA breaking down the playoffs. Guy's a class act, and she's humiliating him." Shaq, meanwhile, sat patiently, his eyes wandering to the abstract art on the walls, pieces he had helped select when La Lumière was founded. As a silent co-founder, he had envisioned a restaurant where everyone felt valued, from the streets of South LA to the mansions of Bel Air. Growing up in Newark, he'd faced judgment for his size, his background, his dreams. Those experiences had taught him to stay calm under pressure, but also to recognize when a lesson was needed. Emma's overheard comments and deliberate neglect were a glaring violation of that vision. And the diner's growing outrage was proof that her actions were reverberating far beyond his table. Lisa, unable to contain herself, turned to Marcus. "I'm posting about this on X right now. La Lumiere's gonna regret letting her act like this. Shaq's a legend." Marcus nodded, his eyes on Shaq. He's not reacting, but he's not clueless. He's waiting for the right moment. This is gonna be big. The tension in La Lumière was a taut wire, ready to snap. Emma's comments, now overheard by half the room, had turned her from a gatekeeper into a pariah. Shaq's calm was a beacon, drawing the room's attention, while Emma's prejudice was tightening the noose around her own reputation. The stage was set for a reckoning that would soon shake the restaurant to its core. The dining room of La Lumière shimmered with the elegance of a Los Angeles gala, its chandeliers casting a warm glow over tables adorned with fine linens and sparkling crystal. The jazz quartet's rendition of Misty floated through the air, a soft counterpoint to the clink of glasses and the murmur of conversations about Hollywood premieres and Silicon Valley ventures. But the room's polished veneer was fracturing, the tension radiating from the corner table where Shaquille O'Neal sat. His massive frame remained relaxed, his faded hoodie and scuffed Air Jordans a quiet defiance of the restaurant's opulence. The $75 chocolate souffle he had ordered, now over 35 minutes late, had become a symbol of Emma's deliberate neglect, and the diner's outrage was reaching a fever pitch. Emma, oblivious to the storm she was brewing, emerged from the kitchen with the long-delayed souffle, its delicate dome perfectly risen, dusted with powdered sugar and paired with a scoop of vanilla bean ice cream. She carried it to Shaq's table with a forced smile, her heels clicking sharply on the polished floor, drawing every eye in the room. As she set the dessert down with a deliberate thud, she couldn't resist a final jab. "Here's your souffle," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Hope it was worth the wait. Not everyone can handle something this fancy." Her words were loud enough to carry, a calculated insult meant to underscore her belief that Shaq was out of place in La Lumière's rarefied world. Shaq looked up, his eyes meeting hers with a calm that seemed to disarm her venom. He smiled, his deep voice warm and steady. "Looks amazing. Thank you for bringing it out." His politeness was a shield, deflecting her rudeness with a grace that only heightened the contrast between them. He picked up the dessert spoon, his massive hand making it look comically small, and nodded appreciatively at the dish. Emma's smirk faltered, her confidence shaken by his unshakable composure. She turned away, her heels clicking sharply, muttering under her breath, "Let's see if he can pay for it." Her words, though hushed, reached nearby tables, fueling the diner's growing indignation. At Lisa's table, the tech entrepreneur's face was flushed with anger. She leaned toward Marcus, her business partner, her voice low but fierce. "Did you hear that? She's mocking him to his face now," she said, gesturing toward Shaq's table. "That's Shaquille O'Neal, Lakers legend, philanthropist, worth $500 million. I saw him on Oprah talking about his education foundation. And she's treating him like he's some broke wannabe? This is beyond disgusting." Marcus nodded, his eyes narrowing as he watched Emma strut back to the service counter. "She's crossed a line. Shaq's a hero in LA, funded schools in Compton, mentors kids. This is gonna blow up on X. La Lumière's done if they let this slide." At the central table, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, the retired Hollywood couple, exchanged a look of quiet fury. Mr. Carter set down his coffee cup, his silver hair catching the chandelier's glow. "That was outright insolence," he murmured to his wife. "I've dined here since the place opened, and I've never seen such blatant disrespect. Shaq's a national icon, 4 NBA championships, TV shows, charities, and she's treating him like he's beneath her." Mrs. Carter, her pearl earrings glinting, nodded. "It's a travesty. I met Shaq at a UNICEF gala. He bid $50,000 on a painting to fund clean water projects. He's got more class than half the people in this room, and she's humiliating him." At another table, Mrs. Hamilton, the elderly woman with a sharp gaze, sipped her chamomile tea, her lips pursed in disapproval. "This is unforgivable," she said to her granddaughter Sophie, a UCLA student. "She's openly insulting him now, after making him wait forever. In America, we're supposed to treat everyone with dignity, no matter their clothes." Sophie, scrolling through X, showed her grandmother a clip of Shaq at a recent LA charity event, handing out backpacks to kids. "Grandma, that's Shaq. He's a legend. Owns Five Guys franchises, DJs at festivals." She's so out of her league. The room was buzzing with outrage. A music producer in a velvet blazer leaned toward his date, his voice low but firm. "She just slammed his dessert down like it's a burger at a diner. That's Shaquille O'Neal. I worked with him on a Nike campaign. Guy's got more heart than half of Hollywood, and she's treating him like trash. His date, a fashion influencer, was typing furiously on X. Waitress at La Lumière just insulted Shaq to his face. Dessert was 35 minutes late and she's mocking him. Horrible service. Shaq, Beverly Hills. A group of influencers at a corner table whispered excitedly, their phones out, capturing discreet videos. That's Shaq Diesel, one said, zooming in. She's straight up dissing him now. He's got 20 million followers, and she's acting like he's nobody. This is going viral, another added, posted it on TikTok. La Lumiere's about to get roasted. Even quieter diners were stirred. A middle-aged couple celebrating their anniversary exchanged glances, the wife whispering. She's mocking him openly now. That's so unprofessional, her husband nodded. That's Shaq. I saw him on TNT analyzing the playoffs. Guy's a class act and she's humiliating him. Shaq, meanwhile, took a slow bite of the soufflé, its rich chocolate melting on his tongue, a testament to the chefs he had helped recruit when he co-founded La Lumière. As a silent partner, he had envisioned a restaurant where everyone felt valued. From the streets of South LA to the mansions of Bel Air, growing up in Newark, he'd faced judgment for his size, his background, his dreams. Those experiences had taught him to stay calm under pressure, but also to recognize when a lesson was needed. Emma's rude remark and deliberate neglect were a glaring violation of that vision, and the diner's outrage was proof that her actions were resonating far beyond his table. Lisa, unable to hold back, turned to Marcus. I'm posting about this on X. La Lumiere's gonna regret this. Shaq's a legend in this city. Marcus nodded, his eyes on Shaq. He's not reacting, but he's not clueless. He's waiting for the right moment. This is gonna hit hard. The tension in La Lumière was a powder keg. Emma's rude remark the spark that threatened to ignite it. Shaq's calm, gracious response only amplified her misstep, drawing the room's attention to her prejudice. The stage was set for a reckoning that would soon shake the restaurant to its core. The dining room of La Lumière pulsed with the glamour of Los Angeles at its peak, the chandeliers casting a golden glow over tables draped in crisp linens and adorned with sparkling crystal. The jazz quartet's soulful rendition of Round Midnight drifted through the air, its haunting notes mingling with the clink of silverware and the murmur of conversations about Hollywood power plays and private equity deals. But the room's polished elegance was unraveling, the tension now a palpable force radiating from the corner table where Shaquille O'Neal sat. His $75 chocolate soufflé, delivered with Emma's biting remark, sat before him, its delicate dome a stark contrast to the heavy atmosphere. Shaq's faded hoodie and scuffed Air Jordans remained a quiet rebellion against the restaurant's opulence, and his gracious thank you in response to Emma's rudeness had only deepened the diner's outrage, turning their sympathy into a collective demand for justice. Emma, back at the service counter, was starting to feel the weight of the room's attention. Her smirk had faded, replaced by a flicker of frustration as she sensed the eyes on her. She leaned toward Jake, the busboy, her voice sharp but tinged with unease. What's everyone staring at? She hissed, her ponytail flicking as she glanced around. He got his stupid soufflé, didn't he? Let him eat it and leave. Her bravado was cracking, her earlier confidence shaken by the growing murmurs and pointed looks from the diners. Jake, polishing a glass, looked nervous, his eyes darting to Shaq's table. Emma, they heard you, he whispered urgently. You were loud, everyone knows you were rude to him. They're talking about it. You need to stop before this gets worse. Emma scoffed, but her hands betrayed her, fidgeting with a napkin. They're overreacting. He's just some guy in a hoodie. This is La Lumière, not a charity diner. But the diners were far from overreacting. Their indignation was boiling over. At Lisa's table, the tech entrepreneur was livid, her face flushed as she leaned toward Marcus, her business partner. She slammed his dessert down and insulted him to his face, she said, her voice low but fierce. That's Shaquille O'Neal, Lakers legend, philanthropist, worth $500 million. I saw him on TED Talks discussing education reform, and she's acting like he's some nobody? I'm posting this on X right now, she typed furiously, her tweet reading, At La Lumière and the waitress just insulted Shaq to his face after a 35-minute wait for dessert. Disgraceful service. Miss Shaq, Beverly Hills. Marcus nodded, his eyes narrowing as he watched Emma's growing unease. She's losing it. Shaq's a hero in LA. Funded community centers in South LA, mentors kids. This is going to tank La Lumière's reputation if they don't step in. At the central table, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, the retired Hollywood couple, were equally incensed. Mr. Carter set down his coffee cup, his silver hair catching the chandelier's glow. That was beyond the pale, he murmured to his wife. I've dined here since the place opened, and I've never seen such blatant disrespect. Shaq's a national icon. 4 NBA rings, TV shows, charities. And she's mocking him openly? Mrs. Carter, her pearl earrings glinting, nodded. It's a travesty. I met Shaq at a Feeding America event. He helped serve meals to families in need. He's got more grace than half the people in this room, and she's humiliating him. I'm tempted to speak to the manager myself. At another table, Mrs. Hamilton, the elderly woman with a sharp gaze, sipped her chamomile tea, her lips pursed in disapproval. This is unforgivable, she said to her granddaughter Sophie, a UCLA student. She insulted him right to his face after making him wait forever. In America, we're supposed to treat everyone with respect, no matter their clothes. Sophie, scrolling through X, showed her grandmother a clip of Shaq at a recent LA charity gala, handing out scholarships. Grandma, that's Shaq. He's a legend. Owns Krispy Kreme franchises, DJs at Coachella. She's so clueless. The outrage was spreading like wildfire. A music producer in a velvet blazer leaned toward his date, his voice low but firm. She just dissed Shaquille O'Neal to his face. I worked with him on a Sprite campaign. Guy's got more heart than half of Hollywood. This place is gonna get shredded online. His date, a fashion influencer, was typing on X. Waitress at La Lumière mocked Shaq after a 35-min dessert delay. He thanked her anyway. Class versus trash. From Shaq. Beverly Hills. A group of influencers at a corner table whispered excitedly, their phones out, capturing discreet videos. That's Shaq Diesel, one said, zooming in. She's straight up disrespecting him and he's just chilling. He's got 20 million followers and she's acting like he's nobody. This is blowing up. Another added, posted it on TikTok. La Lumiere's getting canceled tonight. Even quieter diners were stirred. A middle-aged couple celebrating their anniversary exchanged glances, the wife whispering. She's mocking him openly now and he's still so polite. That's real class. Her husband nodded. That's Shaq. I saw him on Inside the NBA breaking down the playoffs. Guy's a legend and she's making a fool of herself. Shaq, meanwhile, took another slow bite of the soufflé, its rich chocolate a testament to the chefs he had helped recruit when he co-founded La Lumière. As a silent partner, he had envisioned a restaurant where everyone felt valued, from the streets of South LA to the mansions of Bel Air. Growing up in Newark, he'd faced judgment for his size, his background, his dreams. Those experiences had taught him to stay calm under pressure, but also to recognize when a lesson was needed. Emma's rude remark and deliberate neglect were a glaring violation of that vision, and the diner's outrage was proof that her actions were reverberating far beyond his table. Emma, sensing the room's hostility, grew visibly frustrated, her movements jerky as she cleared a nearby table. She muttered to Jake, "Why's everyone acting like I'm the bad guy?" "He's just some guy in a hoodie." But her voice cracked, betraying her unease as the diner's whispers grew louder, their phones buzzing with posts that were already gaining traction online. Lisa, finishing her tweet, turned to Marcus. "This is going viral. La Lumiere's gonna pay for letting her act like this. Shaq's a legend in the city." Marcus nodded, his eyes on Shaq. He's not reacting, but he's not clueless. He's waiting for the perfect moment. This is gonna hit like a freight train. The tension in La Lumière was electric, Emma's frustration a stark contrast to Shaq's calm. Her rude remark had galvanized the room, turning her from gatekeeper to villain. Shaq's gracious response had only amplified her misstep, setting the stage for a reckoning that was now inevitable. The dining room of La Lumière shimmered with the elegance of Los Angeles at its finest, its chandeliers casting a warm glow over tables laden with fine china and sparkling stemware. The jazz quartet's rendition of All the Things You Are drifted through the air, its intricate melody weaving through the clink of glasses and the murmur of conversations about film festivals and venture capital deals. But the room's polished facade was crumbling, the tension now a palpable force radiating from the corner table where Shaquille O'Neal sat. His $75 chocolate soufflé, delivered with Emma's biting remark, sat half-eaten, its rich aroma a stark contrast to the sour atmosphere. Shaq's faded hoodie and scuffed Air Jordans stood out like a quiet rebellion, and his gracious response to Emma's rudeness had only deepened the diner's outrage, turning their whispers into a chorus of condemnation. Emma, at the service counter, was visibly rattled, her earlier smugness replaced by a nervous edge. The diner's stares and murmurs had pierced her confidence, and her hands trembled slightly as she rearranged a stack of napkins. She leaned toward Jake, the busboy, her voice low but sharp with frustration. "Why's everyone acting like I'm the villain?" she hissed. "He's just some guy in a hoodie and they're treating him like royalty." "This is ridiculous." Jake, polishing a glass, shook his head, his voice urgent. "Emma, they know who he is. You're in deep trouble. You need to fix this now." But it was too late. The dining room's energy shifted as a new figure emerged from the back. A man in his 40s dressed in a tailored navy suit, his face a mix of concern and authority. It was Daniel, the restaurant's manager, summoned by the growing buzz of discontent. His eyes scanned the room, catching the pointed glances of diners and the flurry of phones capturing the scene. As he moved toward the service counter, his gaze landed on Shaq's table, and his expression shifted from confusion to recognition, then to quiet alarm. He knew exactly who was sitting there. Shaquille O'Neal, not just a Lakers legend and cultural icon, but the silent co-founder of La Lumière itself. Daniel approached Shaq's table, his demeanor professional but warm. "Mr. O'Neal," he said, his voice carrying a respectful tone that silenced nearby conversations. "It's an honor to have you here tonight. I hope everything's been to your satisfaction." His words were deliberate, a subtle signal to the room that he knew who Shaq was, and that Emma's behavior was not lost on him. Shaq looked up, his massive frame relaxed, a faint smile playing on his lips. "The food's incredible, Daniel," he said, his deep voice warm and steady. "The souffle's perfect, just like I knew it would be when we picked the chefs." His words were laced with a knowing tone, a reminder of his role in the restaurant's creation, though he kept it subtle, his eyes twinkling with amusement. Daniel's face tightened slightly, a flicker of unease crossing his features as he registered the implication. He nodded, his voice lowering. "I'm glad to hear that, sir. If there's anything you need, please let me know personally." He glanced toward Emma, who was frozen at the service counter, her face paling as she realized the manager's familiarity with her customer. The diners, already on edge, erupted into hushed conversations. At Lisa's table, the tech entrepreneur leaned toward Marcus, her voice low but triumphant. "The manager knows him," she whispered. "That's Shaquille O'Neal, Lakers legend, philanthropist worth $500 million. I saw him on 60 Minutes talking about his education initiatives." "Emma's done for," she typed furiously on X. "Manager at La Lumière just recognized Shaq. Waitress who insulted him is shook. Justice incoming." "You Shaq, Beverly Hills." Marcus nodded, his eyes on Emma's stricken expression. She had no idea who she was messing with. "Shaq's a hero in LA, built community centers in Compton. This is gonna be a bloodbath for her." At the central table, Mr. and Mrs. Carter exchanged a look of quiet satisfaction. Mr. Carter set down his coffee cup, his silver hair catching the chandelier's glow. "The manager knows exactly who he is," he murmured to his wife. "Shaq's not just a customer, he's got a stake in this place. I met him at a charity auction. He bid $100,000 for kids' scholarships." Emma's about to learn a hard lesson. Mrs. Carter, her pearl earrings glinting, nodded. "It's about time. This place was supposed to be about inclusivity, not elitism. Shaq's a gentleman, and she's been nothing but cruel." At another table, Mrs. Hamilton, the elderly woman with a sharp gaze, sipped her chamomile tea, a faint smile on her lips. "The manager's stepping in," she said to her granddaughter, Sophie. "That man's no ordinary customer. In America, we're supposed to treat everyone with respect, and she failed miserably." Sophie, scrolling through X, showed her grandmother a clip of Shaq at a recent LA event, handing out toys to kids. "Grandma, that's Shaq. He's a legend, owns Five Guys franchises, DJs at festivals." "She's so screwed." The room buzzed with renewed energy. A music producer in a velvet blazer leaned toward his date, his voice low but firm. "The manager just called him Mr. O'Neal. That's Shaquille O'Neal. I worked with him on a Reebok ad." Emma's toast. His date, a fashion influencer, posted on X. "Manager at La Lumière knows Shaq. Waitress who dissed him is panicking. Karma's here. Shaq, Beverly Hills." A group of influencers at a corner table whispered excitedly, their phones out, capturing the scene. "That's Shaq Diesel," one said, zooming in. "The manager's treating him like a VIP. She's done. This is going viral." Another added, "Posted it on TikTok. La Lumière's getting roasted tonight." Shaq, meanwhile, took another bite of his souffle, its rich chocolate a reminder of the vision he had poured into La Lumière as its silent co-founder. Growing up in Newark, he'd faced judgment for his size, his background, his dreams. Those experiences had taught him to stay calm, but also to recognize when a lesson was needed. Emma's rude remarks and deliberate neglect were a betrayal of the restaurant's mission, and the manager's recognition had just raised the stakes. Emma, now visibly shaken, avoided eye contact with Daniel, busying herself with a tray of glasses. Her frustration was turning to panic, the weight of her missteps crashing down as the room's attention zeroed in on her. The diner's outrage, the manager's arrival, and Shaq's calm were converging into a perfect storm, and the stage was set for a reckoning that would soon shake La Lumière to its core. The dining room of La Lumière glowed with the understated opulence of Beverly Hills, its chandeliers casting a soft light over tables draped in fine linens and adorned with sparkling crystal. The jazz quartet's rendition of My One and Only Love drifted through the air, its tender notes a stark contrast to the electric tension pulsing through the room. The atmosphere, once a symphony of clinking glasses and murmured conversations about Hollywood deals and tech ventures, was now a taut wire centered on the corner table where Shaquille O'Neal sat. His half-eaten $75 chocolate souffle sat before him, a symbol of Emma's deliberate neglect and rude remarks, while his faded hoodie and scuffed Air Jordans stood as a quiet rebellion against the restaurant's elite veneer. Shaq's calm demeanor and gracious response to Emma's insolence had galvanized the diner's outrage, and the manager's arrival had raised the stakes to a breaking point. Daniel, the manager, stood by Shaq's table, his tailored navy suit a picture of professionalism, but his face betrayed a mix of respect and unease. He had just addressed Shaq as Mr. O'Neal, a deliberate acknowledgement of his identity that sent ripples through the room. The diners, already buzzing with indignation, leaned forward, their whispers growing louder as they sensed a turning point. Emma at the service counter was frozen, her earlier frustration morphing into dread as she caught Daniel's glance. Her hands gripped a tray of glasses, her knuckles white, as she realized the gravity of her mistake. Daniel cleared his throat, his voice steady, but carrying a weight that silenced the room. "Mr. O'Neal, I want to personally apologize for any inconvenience tonight," he said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "As one of La Lumiere's founding investors, your vision for this restaurant, to be a place where everyone feels welcome, means everything to us. I'm deeply sorry if that vision wasn't upheld tonight." His words landed like a bombshell, revealing not only Shaq's fame, but his ownership stake in the very establishment Emma had tried to gatekeep. A collective gasp swept through the dining room, followed by a flurry of whispers. Shaq, still relaxed, gave a slight nod, his deep voice warm but measured. "Appreciate that, Daniel. The food's still top-notch. Just want to make sure this place stays true to what we built it for." His words, laced with a quiet authority, underscored his role as a co-founder, sending shockwaves through the room. Emma's face drained of color, her tray clattering slightly as she set it down. She stared at Shaq, her earlier smugness replaced by a dawning horror. She had mocked and neglected not just a customer, but a Lakers legend, a global icon, and, most damningly, the man who had helped create La Lumière. Her whispered barbs, her deliberate delays, her rude remarks, all aimed at a man whose name was synonymous with success and generosity, had been witnessed by a room full of influential diners. At Lisa's table, the tech entrepreneur's eyes widened, her voice a mix of triumph and disbelief as she leaned toward Marcus, her business partner. "He's the co-founder?" she whispered. "That's Shaquille O'Neal, four-time NBA champ, philanthropist worth $500 million. I saw him on Bloomberg talking about his business empire." "She insulted the guy who owns this place," she typed furiously on X. "Shocker at La Lumière. Shaq's the co-founder. Waitress who dissed him is done." "Shaq, Beverly Hills." Marcus shook his head, a grin spreading across his face. She had no clue. "Shaq's a hero in LA, built schools in Compton, mentors kids. This is going to be a PR disaster for La Lumière if they don't handle it right." At the central table, Mr. and Mrs. Carter exchanged a look of quiet vindication. Mr. Carter set down his coffee cup, his silver hair catching the chandelier's glow. "He's the co-founder," he murmured to his wife. "I knew Shaq was a big deal. 4 NBA rings, TV shows, charities, but he helped build this place?" "Emma's career is over." Mrs. Carter, her pearl earrings glinting, nodded. "I met him at a Red Cross gala. He donated a fortune for disaster relief." "He's a gentleman, and she's been nothing but cruel." At another table, Mrs. Hamilton, the elderly woman with a sharp gaze, sipped her chamomile tea, a satisfied smile on her lips. "He owns the place," she said to her granddaughter Sophie. "In America, we're supposed to respect everyone, and she judged him for his clothes. What a fool!" Sophie, scrolling through X, showed her grandmother a clip of Shaq at a recent LA event, handing out scholarships. "Grandma, that's Shaq. He's a legend. Owns Five Guys franchises, DJs at Coachella." "She's toast." The shockwaves rippled outward. A music producer in a velvet blazer leaned toward his date, his voice low but firm. "Shaq's the co-founder? I worked with him on a Pepsi campaign. Guy's a genius." She mocked the guy who built this place. His date, a fashion influencer, posted on X. "Waitress at La Lumière dissed Shaq, and he's the CO founder." Mind blown. Karma's real. Shaq, Beverly Hills. A group of influencers at a corner table whispered excitedly, their phones out, capturing the scene. "That's Shaq Diesel," one said, zooming in. "He owns this place, and she's been treating him like trash." "This is going viral," another added, posted it on TikTok. "La Lumiere's getting canceled tonight." Even quieter diners were stirred. A middle-aged couple celebrating their anniversary exchanged glances, the wife whispering, "He's the co-founder." "She insulted the man who made this restaurant." "That's unreal." Her husband nodded. "That's Shaq. I saw him on TNT analyzing the playoffs. Guy's a legend, and she's done." Shaq, meanwhile, took another slow bite of his soufflé, its rich chocolate a testament to the vision he had poured into La Lumière. Growing up in Newark, he'd faced judgment for his size, his background, his dreams. Those experiences had taught him to stay calm, but also to recognize when a lesson was needed. Emma's prejudice had betrayed the restaurant's mission, and the diner's shock was proof that her actions had consequences far beyond his table. Emma, now trembling, avoided Daniel's gaze, busying herself with a stack of napkins. Her panic was palpable, the weight of her missteps crushing her as the room's attention turned to her. Lisa, finishing her tweet, turned to Marcus. "This is blowing up on X. La Lumiere's gonna feel this. Shaq's a legend." Marcus nodded, his eyes on Shaq. He played it cool, but he's got the whole room behind him. This is her last night here. The revelation of Shaq's fame and ownership had sent shockwaves through La Lumière, turning Emma from gatekeeper to pariah. Shaq's calm, Daniel's apology, and the diner's outrage had set the stage for a reckoning that would soon bring the restaurant's values back into focus. The dining room of La Lumière buzzed with a tension that clung to the air like static, its chandeliers casting a golden glow over tables adorned with fine china and crystal stemware. The jazz quartet's rendition of Skylark floated softly, its wistful melody a stark contrast to the charged atmosphere. The revelation of Shaquille O'Neal's fame and ownership of the restaurant had sent shockwaves through the room, transforming the diner's outrage into a collective anticipation. Shaq sat at his corner table, his half-eaten $75 chocolate soufflé before him, his faded hoodie and scuffed Air Jordans, a quiet defiance of the restaurant's opulence. His calm demeanor, even after Emma's rude remarks and deliberate neglect, had only amplified the room's support, and the manager's apology had set the stage for a reckoning. Emma stood at the service counter, her face ashen, her earlier bravado shattered. The weight of Daniel's words, revealing Shaq as not just a global icon but La Lumière's co-founder, had left her trembling, her hands fumbling with a stack of napkins. She avoided eye contact with Daniel, who stood nearby, his expression a mix of disappointment and resolve. The diner's whispers and the flurry of phones capturing the scene only deepened her panic. She muttered to Jake, the busboy, her voice barely audible. "I didn't know." "How was I supposed to know?" Jake, polishing a glass, shook his head. "Emma, you didn't even try to be decent. Everyone's watching now." Shaq, sensing the moment, set down his dessert spoon and stood, his massive frame commanding the room without effort. The jazz quartet's notes seemed to fade as every eye turned to him. He walked toward the service counter, his steps deliberate but unthreatening, his presence a blend of authority and warmth. The diners held their breath, phones poised as he stopped in front of Emma, who looked up, her eyes wide with dread. "Emma," Shaq said, his deep voice soft but clear, carrying a gentleness that belied his size. "I don't think we got off on the right foot tonight. I ordered that soufflé because I know how good this place can be. I helped build it to welcome everyone, no matter how they're dressed or where they're from. I'm sorry if I made you feel like I didn't belong, but I hope you'll think twice before judging someone by their clothes again." His words were polite, almost kind, but they carried a weight that cut through the room, a lesson wrapped in grace. Emma's face flushed, her mouth opening and closing as she struggled for a response. I didn't know who you were," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry." Her apology was weak, overshadowed by the realization of her missteps, but Shaq nodded, his smile faint but genuine. "It's all good. Just treat the next person better, all right?" He turned back to his table, leaving Emma exposed under the room's scrutiny. The diners erupted into hushed conversations, their admiration for Shaq's composure palpable. At Lisa's table, the tech entrepreneur leaned toward Marcus, her voice low but fervent. "He just schooled her with class," she whispered. "That's Shaquille O'Neal, Lakers legend, philanthropist, worth $500 million. I saw him on The View talking about his charity work. She's lucky he's so gracious." She typed on X. Shaq just confronted the rude waitress at La Lumière with pure class. "He's the co-founder and a legend." "You're Shaq, Beverly Hills." Marcus nodded, a grin spreading across his face. "That's how you handle it. Shaq's a hero in LA, built schools in Compton, mentors kids. She's got no excuse now." At the central table, Mr. and Mrs. Carter exchanged a look of quiet approval. Mr. Carter set down his coffee cup, his silver hair catching the chandelier's glow. "That was masterful," he murmured to his wife. "Shaq's a national icon. 4 NBA rings, TV shows, charities, and he just taught her a lesson without raising his voice." Mrs. Carter, her pearl earrings glinting, nodded. "I met him at a Habitat for Humanity event. He built homes for families. He's a gentleman and she's been schooled." At another table, Mrs. Hamilton, the elderly woman with a sharp gaze, sipped her chamomile tea, a satisfied smile on her lips. That's how you handle prejudice, she said to her granddaughter Sophie. In America, we're supposed to respect everyone. And he just showed her what dignity looks like. Sophie, scrolling through X, showed her grandmother a clip of Shaq at a recent LA charity event, handing out toys.
Grandma, that's Shaq. He's a legend. Owns Five Guys franchises, DJs at festivals.
She's done. The room buzzed with renewed energy. A music producer in a velvet blazer leaned toward his date, his voice low but firm. Shaq just put her in her place with kindness. I worked with him on a Nike ad. Guy's a genius. She's finished. His date, a fashion influencer, posted on X. Shaq confronted the rude waitress at La Lumière with pure class. He's the co-founder. Karma's real. Shaq. Beverly Hills. A group of influencers at a corner table whispered excitedly, their phones out, capturing the moment. That's Shaq Diesel, one said, zooming in. He owned her with a smile. He's the co-founder, and she's toast. This is going viral. Another added, posted it on TikTok. La Lumiere's getting roasted. Shaq returned to his table, taking another bite of his soufflé. Its rich chocolate, a reminder of the vision he had poured into La Lumière as its co-founder. Growing up in Newark, he'd faced judgment for his size, his background, his dreams. Those experiences had taught him to stay calm, to teach through example, and his polite confrontation had done just that. Emma's prejudice had betrayed the restaurant's mission, and the diner's admiration was proof that Shaq's approach had resonated. Emma, now trembling, avoided Daniel's gaze, her face burning with shame. Daniel stepped closer to her, his voice low but firm. "We'll talk later," he said, his tone leaving no doubt about the consequences. The diner's phones buzzed with posts, the story already spreading online. Lisa, finishing her tweet, turned to Marcus. "This is viral now. Shaq's a legend, and he just showed everyone what class looks like." Marcus nodded, his eyes on Shaq. He didn't need to raise his voice. She's done herself in. The tension in La Lumière had shifted, Emma's prejudice exposed and dismantled by Shaq's calm, polite confrontation. The stage was set for a resolution that would restore the restaurant's values and leave a lasting lesson in its wake. The dining room of La Lumière shimmered under the soft glow of its chandeliers, the elegance of its fine china and crystal stemware now overshadowed by a profound shift in the air. The jazz quartet's rendition of What a Wonderful World drifted gently, its hopeful notes a fitting backdrop to the resolution unfolding at the heart of the restaurant. The tension that had gripped the room, sparked by Emma's rude remarks and deliberate neglect of Shaquille O'Neal, had reached its climax with Shaq's polite confrontation and the revelation of his fame and ownership. His corner table, where the half-eaten $75 chocolate soufflé sat, had become a focal point of justice, his faded hoodie and scuffed Air Jordans a symbol of humility in the face of prejudice. The diners, their phones buzzing with viral posts, watched with a mix of admiration and anticipation as the stage was set for a final lesson. Shaq stood near the service counter, his massive frame a commanding yet gentle presence, having just addressed Emma with a calm that had silenced the room. His words, kind but firm, urging her to treat everyone with respect regardless of appearance, had struck a chord, resonating with the restaurant's original mission. Emma, her face flushed with shame, stood frozen, her earlier bravado replaced by a quiet realization of her missteps. Daniel, the manager, remained nearby, his tailored navy suit a contrast to his stern expression. His gaze fixed on Emma with a promise of consequences. Shaq turned to face the dining room, his deep voice carrying a warmth that drew every eye. "Folks," he began, his tone conversational yet authoritative, "I helped build La Lumière to be a place where everyone feels at home, whether you're in a suit or a hoodie, from Compton or Beverly Hills. Respect isn't about how someone looks or what you think they can afford. It's about seeing the person. I hope tonight's a reminder for all of us to do better." His words, simple yet profound, hung in the air, a call to the restaurant's roots and a lesson for everyone present. The diners erupted into applause, their admiration for Shaq's grace overwhelming. At Lisa's table, the tech entrepreneur leaned toward Marcus, her voice thick with emotion. "That's why he's a legend," she whispered. "Shaquille O'Neal, four-time NBA champ, philanthropist, worth $500 million. I saw him on Ellen talking about his kids' foundation. He just turned this into a masterclass on dignity." She posted on X. "Shaq just gave a lesson on respect at La Lumière. He's the co-founder and a true icon." "Shaq, Beverly Hills." Marcus nodded, his eyes shining. "That's real leadership. He's a hero in LA, built schools in South LA, mentors kids. He didn't just call her out. He lifted everyone up." At the central table, Mr. and Mrs. Carter exchanged a look of deep respect. Mr. Carter set down his coffee cup, his silver hair catching the chandelier's glow. "That was extraordinary," he murmured to his wife. "Shaq's a national icon, 4 NBA rings, TV shows, charities, and he just taught us all what respect means." Mrs. Carter, her pearl earrings glinting, nodded. I met him at a Make-A-Wish event. He made every kid feel special. This is why he's loved. At another table, Mrs. Hamilton, the elderly woman with a sharp gaze, sipped her chamomile tea, her eyes misty. That's the America I believe in, she said to her granddaughter Sophie. Respect for everyone, no matter their clothes. He's a true gentleman. Sophie, scrolling through X, showed her grandmother a clip of Shaq at a recent LA charity run, high-fiving kids. Grandma, that's Shaq. He's a legend. Owns Five Guys franchises, DJs at festivals. He just changed the room. The applause grew louder, phones capturing the moment as posts flooded X and TikTok. A music producer in a velvet blazer leaned toward his date, his voice firm. Shaq just turned this into a life lesson. I worked with him on a Reebok campaign. Guy's a visionary. This place will never be the same. His date, a fashion influencer, posted on X. Shaq's speech at La Lumière on respect was everything. He's the co-founder and a king. Shaq, Beverly Hills. A group of influencers at a corner table whispered excitedly, their phones out. That's Shaq Diesel, one said, zooming in. He's the co-founder and just schooled everyone on respect. This is going viral, another added, posted it on TikTok. La Lumière's getting a wake-up call. Daniel stepped forward, addressing the room. On behalf of La Lumière, I apologize for tonight's lapse in our values. Mr. O'Neal's vision is why this restaurant exists, and will ensure it's upheld moving forward. He turned to Emma, his voice low but firm. Emma, please see me in my office now. Emma, her head bowed, followed him, the weight of her actions sinking in as the diners watched her exit. Shaq returned to his table, taking a final bite of his soufflé, its rich chocolate a testament to the vision he had poured into La Lumière. Growing up in Newark, he'd faced judgment for his size, his background, his dreams. Those experiences had taught him to lead with kindness, to teach through example, and his words tonight had done just that. The diner's applause was proof that his lesson on respect had resonated, restoring the restaurant's mission. Lisa, finishing her tweet, turned to Marcus. This is bigger than viral. Shaq just reminded everyone what matters. He's a legend. Marcus nodded, his eyes on Shaq. He didn't just win tonight, he changed the game. The atmosphere in La Lumière had transformed, the tension replaced by a renewed sense of purpose. Shaq's lesson on respect had not only exposed Emma's prejudice but had reaffirmed the restaurant's values, leaving a lasting impact that would echo far beyond its walls. The dining room of La Lumière glowed with a quiet elegance, its chandeliers casting a warm light over tables draped in fine linens and adorned with sparkling crystal. The jazz quartet's rendition of Somewhere Over the Rainbow drifted through the air, its hopeful melody a perfect underscore to the transformative moment unfolding. The tension that had gripped the room, ignited by Emma's prejudice and neglect of Shaquille O'Neal, had shifted into a profound silence, the diners hanging on the edge of their seats after Shaq's polite confrontation and the revelation of his fame and ownership. His corner table, where the remnants of his $75 chocolate soufflé sat, was now a beacon of humility, his faded hoodie and scuffed Air Jordans a testament to his defiance of judgment. Emma had left the room with Daniel, the manager, her head bowed, but the stage was set for Shaq to deliver a final, powerful message. Shaq stood near the center of the dining room, his massive frame a commanding yet approachable presence, his calm demeanor radiating authority. The quartet softened their playing, sensing the weight of the moment as every eye turned to him. Phones were raised, capturing the scene, but the room was silent, waiting for his words. He cleared his throat, his deep voice warm but resolute, carrying across the restaurant with a clarity that demanded attention. Folks, Shaq began, his tone steady and heartfelt. I grew up in Newark, where people judged me for my size, my clothes, my dreams. I've been in rooms where I was told I didn't belong, but I learned early on that prejudice doesn't define you. It defines the person judging you. La Lumière was built to be different, a place where everyone's welcome, whether you're in a hoodie or a tux, from the streets or the hills. Tonight we saw what happens when someone forgets that. Judging someone by their appearance isn't just wrong, it shuts the door on who they are, what they've done, what they can do. Let's open that door wider, for everyone, every time. His words landed with a quiet power, a call to action that resonated with the restaurant's soul. The diners erupted into applause, their faces reflecting a mix of awe and conviction. Shaq's speech wasn't just a rebuke of Emma's actions, it was a universal lesson, a reminder of the values that defined La Lumière and the broader world beyond its walls. At Lisa's table, the tech entrepreneur leaned toward Marcus, her voice thick with emotion. That was incredible, she whispered. That's Shaquille O'Neal, four-time NBA champ, philanthropist, worth $500 million. I saw him on TED Talk sharing his journey. He just turned this into a movement. She posted on X. Shaq's speech at La Lumière on prejudice was powerful. He's the co-founder and a legend. Fear and Shaq, Rue Beverly Hills. Marcus nodded, his eyes shining. That's why he's a hero in LA. Built schools in South LA, mentors kids. He didn't just call out prejudice, he showed us how to rise above it. At the central table, Mr. and Mrs. Carter exchanged a look of deep admiration. Mr. Carter set down his coffee cup, his silver hair catching the chandelier's glow. That was a masterclass in leadership, he murmured to his wife. Shaq's a national icon, 4 NBA rings, TV shows, charities, and he just reminded us what humanity looks like. Mrs. Carter, her pearl earrings glinting, nodded. I met him at a UNICEF gala. He funded clean water for villages. He's a giant in every way. At another table, Mrs. Hamilton, the elderly woman with a sharp gaze, sipped her chamomile tea, her eyes misty. That's the America I believe in, she said to her granddaughter Sophie. Respect for all, no matter what. He's shown us the way. Sophie, scrolling through X, showed her grandmother a clip of Shaq at a recent LA charity event, handing out scholarships. Grandma, that's Shaq. He's a legend. Owns Five Guys franchises, DJs at festivals. He just changed everything. The applause swelled, phones capturing the moment as posts flooded X and TikTok. A music producer in a velvet blazer leaned toward his date, his voice firm. Shaq just gave a speech for the ages. I worked with him on a Pepsi campaign. Guy's a visionary. This place is reborn. His date, a fashion influencer, posted on X. Shaq's speech at La Lumière on prejudice was unreal. He's the co-founder and a king. Shaq's Beverly Hills. A group of influencers at a corner table whispered excitedly, their phones out. That's Shaq Diesel, one said, zooming in. He's the co-founder and just dropped truth about prejudice. This is going viral. Another added, posted it on TikTok. La Lumière's getting a reset. Shaq returned to his table, the applause still ringing in his ears. He took a final bite of his soufflé. Its rich chocolate a reminder of the vision he had poured into La Lumière as its co-founder. Growing up in Newark, he'd faced prejudice head-on, and those experiences had shaped his belief in leading with kindness and teaching through example. His speech had not only exposed Emma's missteps, but had reaffirmed the restaurant's mission, inspiring everyone present. Daniel returned to the dining room, addressing the crowd briefly. Thank you, Mr. O'Neal, for reminding us why La Lumière exists. We'll ensure our values are upheld, starting tonight. The diners nodded in approval, their respect for Shaq palpable. Emma remained in the back, her fate sealed by her actions. But the room's focus was on Shaq's words, which had shifted the narrative. Lisa, finishing her tweet, turned to Marcus. This is bigger than La Lumière. Shaq's speech is going global. He's a legend. Marcus nodded, his eyes on Shaq. He didn't just end prejudice tonight. He started something new. The atmosphere in La Lumière had transformed, the tension replaced by a renewed sense of unity and purpose. Shaq's speech on prejudice had not only addressed the night's wrongs, but had set a new standard, leaving a legacy of respect that would echo far beyond the restaurant's walls. The dining room of La Lumière shimmered under the warm glow of its chandeliers, the elegance of its fine china and crystal stemware now infused with a renewed sense of purpose. The jazz quartet's rendition of What a Wonderful World continued to drift through the air, its uplifting notes amplifying the transformative energy sparked by Shaquille O'Neal's powerful speech on prejudice. His corner table, where the remnants of his $75 chocolate soufflé sat, had become a symbol of humility and triumph, his faded hoodie and scuffed Air Jordans a testament to his defiance of judgment. The revelation of Shaq's fame and ownership, followed by his call for respect for all, had shifted the room's atmosphere from tension to unity, leaving the diners inspired and the restaurant's values reaffirmed. The applause that erupted after Shaq's speech swelled into a standing ovation, the sound filling the room like a wave. Diners rose from their seats, their faces alight with admiration, their clapping a chorus of support for Shaq's message and his graceful handling of Emma's prejudice. Phones were still raised, capturing the moment, as posts on X and TikTok continued to spread the story, now a viral testament to dignity and respect. At Lisa's table, the tech entrepreneur stood clapping fiercely, her eyes shining as she leaned toward Marcus, her business partner. That was legendary, she whispered. Shaquille O'Neal, 4-time NBA champ, philanthropist, worth $500 million. I saw him on CBS this morning talking about his mentorship programs. He just redefined this place. She posted on X. Shaq's speech at La Lumière got a standing ovation. He's the co-founder and a true icon. Shaq, Beverly Hills, Marcus joined the applause, nodding. That's why he's a hero in LA. Built schools in Compton, lifts up kids. He didn't just shut down prejudice. He built a bridge. At the central table, Mr. and Mrs. Carter stood, their hands clapping in unison, their expressions filled with respect. Mr. Carter, his silver hair catching the chandelier's glow, murmured to his wife, "That was a moment we'll never forget. Shaq's a national icon, 4 NBA rings, TV shows, charities, and he just showed us what leadership looks like." Mrs. Carter, her pearl earrings glinting, nodded. "I met him at a Boys and Girls Club event. He spent hours with the kids. He's a giant in every sense." At another table, Mrs. Hamilton, the elderly woman with a sharp gaze, stood slowly, her hands clapping as tears welled in her eyes. "This is what America should be," she said to her granddaughter, Sophie. "Respect for everyone. He's a true gentleman." Sophie, clapping enthusiastically, showed her grandmother a clip on X of Shaq at a recent LA charity event, handing out backpacks. "Grandma, that's Shaq. He's a legend, owns Five Guys franchises, DJs at festivals. He just changed the game." The ovation continued as a music producer in a velvet blazer stood, clapping loudly, leaning toward his date. "Shaq just rewrote the rules. I worked with him on a Sprite campaign. Guy's a visionary. This place is reborn." His date, a fashion influencer, posted on X. Standing ovation for Shaq's speech at La Lumière. He's the co-founder and a king of Shaq, Monterone, Beverly Hills. A group of influencers at a corner table joined the applause, their phones still recording. "That's Shaq Diesel," one said, zooming in. "He's the co-founder and just dropped a mic on prejudice." "This is viral gold," another added, posted it on TikTok. "La Lumiere's getting a new chapter." Shaq, still standing, raised a hand to acknowledge the applause, his smile warm but humble. He returned to his table, the ovation following him, a testament to the impact of his words. Daniel, the manager, stepped forward, his tailored navy suit a picture of authority, his face reflecting gratitude and resolve. He addressed the room, his voice clear and steady. "Thank you, Mr. O'Neal, for reminding us of La Lumiere's heart. To ensure we uphold our values, I'm arranging a mandatory staff meeting tomorrow morning to discuss respect and inclusivity. We'll make sure this never happens again." The diners nodded in approval, their applause renewing briefly in support of the action. Daniel turned to a nearby server, his voice low but firm. "Please notify the staff. Meeting at 9 a.m. sharp. No exceptions." The server nodded, hurrying to the back as the weight of the night's event settled over the room. Emma, still in Daniel's office, was absent, her fate likely sealed. But the focus was now on the future, on ensuring La Lumière lived up to Shaq's vision. Shaq took a final sip of water, the glass finally refilled by a nervous busboy, and glanced at the abstract art on the walls, pieces he had helped choose as the restaurant's co-founder. Growing up in Newark, he'd faced prejudice for his size, his background, his dreams. Those experiences had taught him to lead with kindness, to teach through example, and tonight's speech had done just that. The diner's ovation and Daniel's commitment to change were proof that his message had taken root. Lisa, finishing her tweet, turned to Marcus. "This is bigger than tonight. Shaq's speech is going to change how people see this place. He's a legend." Marcus nodded, his eyes on Shaq. He didn't just win, he set a new standard. The atmosphere in La Lumière had transformed. The tension replaced by a shared commitment to respect and inclusivity. The standing ovation and the planned staff meeting marked a new beginning, ensuring that Shaq's lesson would shape the restaurant's future and resonate far beyond its walls. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of La Lumière's private dining room, casting a soft glow over the polished mahogany table where the restaurant's staff gathered for the mandatory 9 a.m. meeting. The opulence of the previous night, chandeliers, fine china, and jazz melodies, had given way to a sober atmosphere, the weight of Shaquille O'Neal's speech on prejudice still lingering. The events of the evening, from Emma's rude remarks and deliberate neglect to Shaq's revelation as co-founder and his call for respect, had gone viral, with X and TikTok posts amplifying the story across Los Angeles and beyond. Now, the staff sat in a circle of chairs, their faces a mix of anticipation and unease. As Daniel, the manager, stood at the head of the room, his tailored navy suit replaced by a crisp white shirt, his expression resolute, Daniel cleared his throat, his voice steady but firm. "Last night, we failed to uphold La Lumière's core value, respect for everyone, no matter who they are or how they appear. Mr. O'Neal, our co-founder, reminded us of that in a way that's inspired this city. Today we're here to learn, reflect, and ensure it never happens again." His eyes swept the room, landing briefly on Emma, who sat at the far end, her head lowered, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Emma's face was pale, her usual confidence replaced by a quiet shame. The viral post had made her actions inescapable, and the weight of Shaq's gracious confrontation pressed heavily on her. Daniel nodded to her, his tone measured.
Emma, would you like to say something before we begin?
Emma stood slowly, her voice trembling as she faced the staff.
I messed up last night, she began,
her eyes fixed on the floor. I judged Mr. O'Neal based on his clothes, and I was rude, deliberately. I didn't know who he was, but that's no excuse. I let my assumptions get in the way of treating him like a person.
I'm sorry to him, to all of you, and to La Lumière for betraying what this place stands for.
Her voice cracked, and she sat down quickly, wiping her eyes as the room remained silent, absorbing her words. Daniel nodded, his expression softening slightly. Thank you, Emma. Admitting a mistake is a start. But this isn't just about one person. It's about all of us. We're going to learn from this together. He turned to the group, his voice firm. Prejudice isn't always loud. It's in the small choices, ignoring a table, making assumptions, letting bias guide our actions. Mr. O'Neal's vision for La Lumière is inclusivity, and we're recommitting to that today. He gestured to a whiteboard where he'd written key points from Shaq's speech. Respect for all. No judgment based on appearance. Everyone belongs. These aren't just words, Daniel said. They're our mission. We're going to discuss real scenarios, how to recognize bias in ourselves, how to prioritize every guest, how to embody respect in every interaction. The staff leaned in as Daniel led a discussion, starting with a question. What assumptions do we make about guests based on their appearance, and how can we catch ourselves? Jake, the busboy, spoke up hesitantly. I saw Emma ignore Mr. O'Neal's table, and I didn't say anything. I should have stepped in, but I assumed she knew better. A server added, I've rushed to serve people in suits before others, thinking they're more important. I didn't realize it was bias until now. The conversation deepened, with staff sharing personal experiences and reflecting on moments they'd judged others unconsciously. Daniel introduced role-playing exercises, asking staff to practice greeting guests without preconceptions, emphasizing eye contact, warmth, and fairness. Every guest is a VIP, he said, echoing Shaq's vision. From the moment they walk in, they're part of La Lumière's family. Emma listened quietly, her earlier shame giving way to a tentative resolve. When prompted, she shared again, her voice steadier. I thought I was protecting the restaurant's image, but I was just protecting my own biases. Mr. O'Neal's speech made me see that. I want to do better. The staff nodded, some offering small smiles, sensing her sincerity. Outside, the story continued to ripple. X posts praised Shaq's grace, with one from Lisa, the tech entrepreneur, reading, Shaq's lesson at La Lumière is changing the game. Staff meeting today to ensure respect for all. Shaq, Beverly Hills. A clip of Shaq's speech, posted by an influencer, had millions of views on TikTok, with comments calling him a true legend. As the meeting wrapped up, Daniel concluded, this is a new beginning for La Lumière. We'll hold regular trainings to keep inclusivity first. Mr. O'Neal's generosity, his forgiveness and leadership, has given us a chance to rebuild trust. Let's honor that. He dismissed the staff, asking Emma to stay for a private conversation, hinting at probation but also a path to redemption if she committed to change. Shaq, absent from the meeting, was back in his world, likely preparing for a charity event or TV appearance, his legacy as La Lumière's co-founder stronger than ever. Growing up in Newark, he'd turned prejudice into purpose, and his speech had not only corrected a wrong, but inspired a movement. The staff left the meeting with a renewed sense of purpose, determined to embody the respect Shaq had championed. Shaquille O'Neal sat in the quiet of his Los Angeles home, the city's skyline twinkling beyond his window, a stark contrast to the charged atmosphere of La Lumière the previous night. The dining room's chandeliers, fine china, and jazz melodies were a distant memory, but the impact of his speech on prejudice lingered, its ripples spreading far beyond the restaurant's walls. The viral posts on X and TikTok, with millions of views, had turned the incident into a national conversation, with clips of his words calling for respect for all. Regardless of appearance, shared alongside hashtags like Shaq and Beverly Hills, the $75 chocolate souffle, his faded hoodie, and scuffed Air Jordans had become symbols of humility, while his role as La Lumière's co-founder and his gracious response to Emma's prejudice had inspired a movement. Shaq leaned back in his chair, a glass of iced tea in hand, his massive frame relaxed but his mind active. Growing up in Newark, he'd faced judgment for his size, his background, his dreams, moments that could have hardened him but instead taught him the power of kindness. Those experiences had shaped La Lumière's vision, a restaurant meant to welcome everyone, from South LA to Bel Air. Last night, when Emma's neglect and rude remarks tested that vision, he'd chosen to respond not with anger but with a lesson, rooted in the belief that change comes through understanding, not confrontation. He thought of the diner's standing ovation, their faces reflecting admiration and conviction, and the staff meeting that morning, where Daniel had led a discussion on inclusivity. With Emma's apology marking a step toward redemption, the moment had been bigger than La Lumière. It was a reminder of what America could be. Shaq had seen prejudice in many forms, from the streets of his childhood to the boardrooms of his business empire. He'd built schools in Compton, mentored kids, and funded charities, not for fame but because he believed kindness could break down barriers. His speech had been a call to action, and the response, online and in person, showed it had resonated. Shaq set down his glass, his deep voice steady as he imagined addressing the millions who'd seen the story. America's at its best when we lift each other up, he thought, crafting a message for the world. Kindness isn't about who's in front of you, it's about seeing the person, not the clothes, the car, or the status. I've been judged my whole life, but I learned to answer with heart. Let's make that our standard. Next time you see someone who looks different, don't judge. Smile, listen, learn. Be the reason someone feels seen. That's how we build a better country, one moment at a time. His words were a challenge, a call to action for everyone watching the viral clips or reading the posts. He envisioned viewers pausing to reflect, inspired to act with kindness in their own lives, whether greeting a stranger, serving a customer, or standing up to bias. La Lumière, reborn through the staff's commitment to change, was just the start. Shaq's legacy as a four-time NBA champion, philanthropist, and cultural icon was amplified by this moment. His message a beacon for a nation grappling with division. He stood, glancing at a photo on his wall, a younger Shaq, handing out backpacks at a charity event, surrounded by smiling kids. That was the America he believed in, and last night had been a step toward it. To the viewers, he'd say, "You saw what happened at La Lumière. Now it's your turn. Spread kindness, challenge prejudice, make someone feel they belong. That's the real win."